The feeling of, hey, this is going to happen versus, hey, this is happening are two different things. And I I called my co-founder up one day and I was like, dude, holy shit, like it's working. Like people are on the app and they're using it in the way that we expect them to. Like what the fuck's going on? It's almost like a shock. Like you expected it to happen, but it's here. And he looks at you and you're like, yeah, it's real. Like this is going on. And it's almost like a dream every time you look back and say we achieved another milestone, or it's progressing even more now. And so once it starts to feel real for the outside world, because that's two different things, right? We mentioned about Soar. Things are always happening in the background and nobody else sees that. And that's when the criticism comes and, hey, Johnny, you've been doing this for a while and nothing's really coming of it yet and you haven't really progressed. And that's okay. And I understand that they don't see that. But once they start to really see it, they're either going to say, or they're going to stop saying it, or their criticism doesn't make sense anymore.
What's cooking, everybody? I am joined in the bunker today by my buddy Johnny Rondi. John Rondi is an entrepreneur, ladies and gentlemen. And no, he's not the kind of entrepreneur that Gary Vee says, grind, hustle, work hard, throw it in your Instagram bio, and poof, you're an entrepreneur. Not that kind. Not that kind at all. John Rondi's an entrepreneur who's been in the game with the same project since 2017. And that project, that company, is called Stunited. I'm going to let him tell you about Stunited today because I won't do it justice. But effectively, it is an app that allows college students to save their time. In some circles, certain purists might say it's a cheating app, but we won't go there. Actually, we will today because that's exactly what it is. But it is very, very useful. And I guarantee you, if you went to college or if you are there, you did exactly what the app says it's going to do in an app now instead of actually having to do it yourself. I'll shut up. The second thing that John is known for is the Johnny Drinks TikTok page, which is a page that he stars on with his father. Now, the Johnny Drinks TikTok page is very, very interesting, and it's at John Rondi. It's not at Johnny Drinks. It's at JOHNRONDI, but it's called Johnny Drinks. It's very, very interesting, though, because great entrepreneurs, the best, are people who find a way to be as resourceful as possible to see their vision through. And the fact of the matter is, like many people around the world, when coronavirus hit, it hit at a very bad time for Stunited and threatened to potentially end the company. So John, great entrepreneur that he is, whipped out his camera and took a very nice video that he edited beautifully of his father doing what he loves to do most, which is make these unbelievable drinks and be very entertaining in the process of explaining how it happens. And as such, the Johnny Drinks page was born. And that page effectively funded Stunited throughout 2020 to allow them to get to the next level. And now Stunited is starting to explode. It's like the stars are aligning. I love this shit. But if you've ever heard the Airbnb story and how they kept the company alive, we talked about that today. And I was very happy to know that John was extremely familiar with that story because his story has a lot of Airbnb vibes to it. So I hope you enjoy the episode. This guy's awesome. I'm looking forward to having him in again. And it's a small world, by the way, because John was on my buddy Mitch and Mike's and Timo's podcast, Project Aeronaut, a couple months ago. And I got connected with John maybe a week or two after he was on that episode. Didn't know who he was because I hadn't seen that episode, but looked at the name and I'm like, why do I know this name? And then boom, I was like, oh my God, this is the guy that was just on their latest episode. So shout out to Mitch and Mike and the boys over there. And shout out to John for coming through. I was very excited to bring him in, as I said, and this was a great conversation. Anyway, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, which if you're on YouTube right now, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, and leave a like and comment on the video if you would, please. And to all the people who have left 5-star reviews with a comment on Apple Podcasts, thank you. They continue to roll in. They're great. They're a huge help. So if you haven't had a chance to do that yet and you can take a minute to do so, I would really, really appreciate it. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian Dorey, and this is TRENDIFIER. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where is the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions.
Joe Rogan, I don't know if he started to do it more often, but it seems like a lot of his podcasts now start like mid-combo. Like they were kind of just shooting the shit, having a conversation, and there you go.
A lot of them do.
Because it makes
exactly
sense, bro.
What we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, shit. When I did the one with Mitch, he came over and I was like sick, like just having a bad day. Mm-hmm. And so for like 40 minutes, I was like, and then I said, Queeby, oh shit, they just ran it. And then we hit it. And so we recorded for like 4 hours and the podcast was 3 because, I picked it up an hour in.
Right. It's a long fucking podcast.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Time in this place, it doesn't exist.
Well, that's what we were talking about before. It's almost like you get into this like flow state. And when you're in the flow state, time doesn't exist.
Yeah, when Giovanni was in here last week, I was like, dude, we got to stop. Like, fuck.
Yeah.
We're starting podcast 2 right now if we keep going.
Really?
Yeah, because it was like we were so deep on, I don't know, there were like 6 heavy themes throughout that podcast that we kept on just like circling around to. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. We got to stop. And then we went downstairs and got takeout and we were just talking about it for like 4 hours. And at the end, he's like, dude, we should just brought the mics down here.
Yeah, just started
Could have done
again.
a second one. But yeah, I mean, when I had Horo down here, same thing. He came down here to do one. We were 3.5 hours in. I was like, dude, we're really hot right now. We can't stop. He's like, oh no, we're doing a second.
Now, do you notice from like a viewer standpoint which ones do better? Like, do the longer ones do or perform the same as the shorter ones?
Doesn't have anything to do with it.
Really?
Because the model I've gone to with the long form content, it's consistent. The shortest one I did was like 2 hours and 18 minutes, and it was heavy.
Wow.
It was heavy. It was with Adam Herman, who was in the Peace Corps for 2 years, living out in the middle of nowhere in Africa.
Holy shit.
And just, an unbelievable experience and everything. And he really... I just sat the hell back and let him go, and it was really, really good. So it was almost like, and it was also early in the morning when he got here to record. So at the end, I was like, okay, I don't even know what else we can, like if we go down something else, I don't know where this is going.
Yeah.
So let's just let people take it there. But yeah, man, I mean, I did the solos at the beginning because I had to, just to show people I was doing this when I launched. And then I was thinking, I'm probably going to need to do like 30 before anyone wants to come in. But when I launched with 10, and I had 2 of them where I'd guess, and then people were hitting me up like, oh, I want to come in. I was like,
dude, people love this. I mean, especially with somebody like you. And that's where I think the goal of a podcast is like to bring people into the flow state with you. Like I listened to Naval and Joe Rogan the other day, and that's like a long podcast, like 3 hours. And I was shoveling snow. So it was like 2 hours I was doing it. And I was so consumed with what they were talking about, I didn't care about the time. Like that could have been a 10-hour podcast and I would have kept listening. So like, I think that's the objective, and it really doesn't matter how long it takes, us to get people in there, as long as we can get them in, type of thing.
Do you feel like when you're listening to stuff like that, whether it be Rogan or, I mean, actually you can look at a lot of guys in his tree, right? So on the intellectual side, on the comedy side, it could be like Lex Friedman or Whitney Cummings. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like when you're listening to it, it's almost like you're sitting at the table with them and they're just chilling? That's
the thing. Like it's so conversational, and it's conversations with people that are way smarter than I am. Like like I'll use Naval again, probably one of the smartest people that I've heard speak, and he dumbs everything down that I understand it. And people love feeling smarter than they are. So for me, I'm like, oh shit, I understand Naval. I must be a smart dude. So like that sort of conversation is definitely helpful for the flow thing. When you start talking and like we talked about before, using verbiage that nobody else understands, I'm lost in 10 minutes, man. I don't want to hear you talk anymore.
When it's canned, too.
Yeah.
I can't. When I was a kid, I did appreciate some good TV interviews and whatever. And don't get me wrong. Like, you listen to Diane Sawyer do that stuff. I mean, Oprah, these people were incredible at it. And I respect the work a lot. But the world's changed, and that whole all the lights and cameras went on, and all these producers came in, and now they're in your ear and telling you what to do, and now you're going to ask this gotcha question and go from there. And by the way, we have 10 minutes before commercial. That's dead.
Yeah.
People don't want that. They want that on demand. They want to almost like relax, but they don't mind getting worked up if the topic's right.
Yeah.
You know?
They want to be in the room with you, and that's why Clubhouse is like such a big. I think it's so hot right now because of that. I can literally, and that's as conversational as it gets. Like that's what a podcast should try to become. Is more so like I've almost caught myself almost interjecting into a podcast conversation, like me saying out that like, right, yep, sure, Joe Rogan, gotcha, but like I'm not fucking there, and that's like I said, that's a really powerful thing to do.
Clubhouse is the next frontier, man. I really, really believe in that app.
I'm just so curious, like, where it goes, you know, like from a monetization standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. You can start charging people to get into rooms. Like that's a very feasible and understandable. Tips. Yeah. Like very, very understandable. But like, I guess my question is, what does it then take over? Like, does now podcast become obsolete? Does, Twitter become obsolete because people want to hear people talk instead of write? Like, I'm just very interested to see how the world adapts to it.
I don't want to say neither as my answer to that opinion. I almost want to say neither, though.
Yeah.
The podcast one, I see, I'm pretty confident in my prediction there. I see this one pretty clearly, but who the fuck knows? I could be totally wrong. I think that podcasting has the highest volume of dog shit of almost any medium you can find.
Sure.
You have a lot of people who think that you're just going to put up a mic or not even a mic sometimes, and talk, and like people are going to listen to it. Like they're going to devote that time to it. And so stereotypically, you just see a lot of podcasts where it's like supporting your business. It's named after your company, or it's on a very specific niche and whatever. If I were a niche podcaster right now and I had a big audience, I'd be running to Clubhouse.
100%.
Running, because they're not listening to you for escapism, entertainment in all likelihood. Not everyone. Don't want to overgeneralize, but they're going for strict value. Now add a platform that's only going to get better with its audio quality that allows you that potential interconnectivity where you can actually ask the question while you're thinking of this shit or doing whatever. It's a threat.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing too. Like, I think that's where you can really show that you know your shit is on something like Clubhouse. Anybody can type up a nice little tweet or put together a pre-recorded podcast, but to voice something live and it make a lot of sense, that is very hard to do. And that's where, like I said, the fakers and the jokers of the world are gonna be caught. Like, you're not gonna be able to fake that shit live, and we've seen that already in Clubhouse rooms.
They hit a really good middle ground too, because it's not invasive with video. Not one thing Naval tweeted was like, Clubhouse has proven that video isn't the feature, it's the bug. Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. It's not like, oh, we're not going to do FaceTime or something. This is different. For that medium, you wouldn't be going into these rooms if they were Zoom rooms.
No.
And you had to be on camera.
No way.
No. Like, I'll be in Clubhouse walking around the house naked. It's
me too,
great.
bro. Yeah.
No one knows. It's this nice middle ground, and I know Giovanni and I were talking about this last week too, but when you look at Twitter, you can pick out that perfect tweet. I think you just said that yourself. You can write out that perfect thing in your mind. Perfect, whatever. And you have the protection of literally being behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people in this world that type in uppercase and speak in lowercase. And so when you go on Clubhouse, guess what? You can't hide. If you're just like some trolls like, I'm going to fuck this guy up. Well, now you go on Clubhouse and say, sure, I think you're a fucking... Well, fuck you. Get out of here. It's not going to work.
You almost wish, like, everyone would be called out the way they would be in Clubhouse if you tried to talk shit like that. And you notice that, like, we were having a semi-argument in the Clubhouse the other day, and just a conversation that we disagreed upon with other people. Nobody got hostile because you're not going to when you're having a conversation. But if that was a tweet battle, people would get angry. And I think that's another good point that Naval brought up, is like the video is like the bug. I don't think a live text chat like a Twitter, but now live, would do as well as Clubhouse. Like, I wouldn't want to read live tweets coming in. I think Twitter is, exactly. So I do. I think they found like the perfect scenario here.
I forget the scientific term. I think it's like bits. They describe it, but think about the bits and output, whatever the term is. I know Elon uses it all the time, that you have to use when you are typing, using your fingers, whether that be on the phone or if you're actually using the laptop to do it,
Right.
versus when you're speaking and the ability to get out a high rate of words and free thought that also isn't grammatically held to what it would be held to in writing.
That's a good point. And actually, I started now. I used to back in the day, like people would voice memo me stuff, like in Instagram DMs, like try to sell me shit. And I thought it was like the cheesiest thing to do. But I find myself doing it because, like you said, it's so much easier. I want to get my point across in 30 seconds. It would have taken me 5 minutes to type this thing out and make sure it's grammatically correct and looks proper. Like, I'm just going to send you a voice memo. You know, like I know what I want to say. So here you go. Take a listen.
Yeah, I think I'm still on the side of if it's a text, keep it text.
Keep it text.
Yeah.
Don't be sending me, hey,
I'm not
man.
going to call you out too much there, but when I get a voice memo, I'm like, what the fuck? This isn't a voicemail box. Like, let's go. Just text it out.
How are you, man? What's going on, buddy?
I like both, though.
Yeah.
I want one or the other. So forget Clubhouse for a second. I love talking on the phone. I love calling people. People hate answering the phone now. But then they end up talking to me for like an hour or two when they actually answer. That, I think, is like a bad trait we have. People are like, no, just text.
Right.
I'm like, but we got to like talk.
Right.
I'm like trying to type this out. I'm like, it's not working.
There's
like
so much lost in that text.
Yeah. I want to hear the tone of your voice, the flow of your emotions and everything. Like on text, it's this on-demand kind of thing.
Caps, exclamation point.
Exactly.
What the fuck is that? Yeah.
Like I have one of my best friends for years. I think there was probably like a 4-year period where he never answered a phone call and would routinely let it go and then immediately go, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Can't talk.
Can't talk. What the fuck you do?
And so now, and he just later admitted, like, I just really don't like talking on the phone. He's like finicky like that.
Yeah.
And so now he'll call me once in a while. And every time he does, I'm like, I stop what I'm doing. I'm like, is everything okay?
Yeah, whoa.
You good? He's like, no, bro, just call and talk. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
Hey, what's up, man? But there's a lot of people like that in our generation.
That's a really good way to build a relationship quick. Like you just meet somebody and the first phone call, or I'm sorry, the first way they communicate with you is a phone call or a FaceTime. It's like, whoa, like, all right, now we're sort of on a higher level automatically because we've already broken that sort of barrier of going through text and then maybe a call and now FaceTime. Like we're jumping right into it. And being able to voice your opinions properly and like real naturally, I think is a huge skill. And most people don't have that right now.
It's true, and it's a skill that's going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I, this is our first time together.
Yeah.
Like we've been best friends for like the last month since we got connected. We just talk on the phone every day. And we talk on Clubhouse sometimes. So it's like we know each other well. Like when you walked up, it was like, hey, what's up, man?
Like I've known you
my entire life.
Right. Imagine all we did was text before I got here today.
It wouldn't work.
Right. It wouldn't have worked.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
You don't know who someone is when they text. You really don't. There are, and I'll give people credit. There are a lot of people who are like nasty on Twitter just because they let all the neurons and stuff fire the wrong ways and just react, who are really nice people in real life. And you're like, dude, just put it away.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
You got to see somebody get like, I think my opinion is you got to see somebody get really emotional to understand who they are. And that could be super excited, super upset, super drunk, or whatever it may be. But like that's how you really break down those walls of like the awkwardness and say, okay, this is who this person is. And if you don't have that ever with somebody, I don't think you ever get to really form a relationship with them. You know, girl or guy, it doesn't matter.
It's one of the many overlaps of like business, friendships, and relationships.
Yeah.
It is all a part of the same circle. And it's true. You need to be able to understand how people react when shit hits the fan, because no matter what, if you are in any kind of long-term friendship or relationship with somebody, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you better know how to deal with that when it does. And when people don't know that's coming, I mean, that makes or breaks things.
Yeah.
Not just relationships. It like, let's go to business on that example. It makes or breaks businesses.
It's interesting you brought up business because I think I went like I went like a year and a half with my current co-founder of like never really arguing. And I like never thought we would, but we're very opposite. Like we mentioned before, like he's just such a different human being than I am. And that's sort of why it works out well. And the first time we like argued, it was almost like you were afraid to, and at the same time we needed to. Like we needed to hash things out. There was points that I needed to make, and there was points that he needed to make, and I couldn't just sit back and sort of him and ignore that. So it was like, no, look, if we want to make this thing work, we're gonna get down and hash this out. And now it's almost like it's very natural where I can get angry with him, he can get angry with me, and I don't feel bad about it. And then we get over it. And that's a really cool place to be in with somebody.
Yeah. And some of the best businesses or relationships are when opposites attract too, because there's this perfect offset where you have to have those moments and everything, but you know when you each go there, it's just entirely different. So what's the point?
Right.
You know, whereas like when people are the same, you know, they see the same, they get pissed off at the same things in the other person.
I was just, if I'm like, Dave, I'm fucking pissed right now. Look what just happened. And he's like, well, you know, you should look at it from this perspective. And I'm like, all right, you're right. If we're both just like feeding off each other's negative energy, like I didn't learn anything from you because we're both seeing this thing the same way. So it doesn't make sense. Yeah. You definitely need that.
Well, I actually want to ask you about that business to start off here.
Sure.
This thing's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I met you through Fenu, who he's an advisor for your company.
Yeah.
So Fenu was on Number 30. If you haven't watched that podcast, very good one, smart guy. So he explained to me the app and said, yeah, you know, it's basically like a bartering service for students. Yeah. I'm like, okay. So they're just cheating with each other? He said, yeah. I don't know if I would say that, but basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So tell me about Stunited. Is that accurate? And how does this exactly work? Because you've been building this a while, and it's pretty impressive.
Thank you. And it's funny you brought up Fenu because he actually has he doesn't realize how big of a role he has and had with just one conversation, right? So I started Stunited, which is essentially, you know, an academic marketplace for students to barter assignments and skills with one another, right? Yeah, we got Stunited fanboys in here.
Yeah, I'm holding up my mug to the camera if you're listening and not watching, but you know, continue.
You know, so and the real premise behind the idea was I was always the kid that struggled to finish up papers and was pretty good at math and would offer up this barter to say, look, finish up this essay for me, and in exchange, I'll help you with your algebra homework, right? Whatever it was. Soon realized I can make a business out of this where I was making money or I was finding help inside and outside of school. But the light bulb really went off when I realized that, holy shit, I'm not the only student doing this. You know, I'm not the only student writing in group chats, knocking on my neighbors' doors, doing what I need to do to find unique ways to either give help and make some cash or get help in a pinch.
I'm not the only one cheating around here,
I can't be the only one trying to leverage my network and collaborate with other students. So I identified that pretty quickly, and it's not something that's like a crazy thing to identify because it's very obvious.
Very common. Yeah.
So, you know, I saw it out and said, okay, why not create something like it? It's interesting because, like I said, I launched the first version of the app back in 2017. The framework is more of like a dating app for education. So we called ourselves like the Tinder for tutoring. Great catch line. You know, it was catchy. We had some buzz around us.
And you were still in college.
Still in college. And where I give myself and our team credit was we did a great job with brand awareness. So I was that kid who I was at a different college every week of my college semester. I was setting up a little table. I'd have cute girls wear my t-shirts and I would hand out hot dogs for downloads, right? So we would cause a scene wherever we were. And the idea was so fresh that people didn't mind seeing us there. And so if you've ever dealt with like a fraternity, it's very hard to gain like their trust in a way. So me coming in, they're like, who the fuck is this kid setting up a tent and handing out hot dogs to our girls?
How many women you have with you?
Right, yeah.
5-to-1 ratio,
exactly,
you're not getting in.
Exactly. So as long as we were on like an even keel level, that was cool for me. But as we started to grow or attempt to grow, we always, I was shying away from the whole cheating thing, right? And people would ask, well, isn't that just cheating? And I would say, no, that is
it's academic bartering.
Right. I would say terms like that. I would say, look, we don't condone inappropriate behavior. That is an abuse of our technology. If you're caught cheating, you're subject to the same guidelines that you would be if you got caught in your classroom, right? So that was the stance I took. I talked to Fenu one day about this, and that was during when, we were attempting to become like a B2B company, selling it to schools and saying, look, this is a retention tool, right? So we can really learn the user behavior for students, what it looks like to succeed versus fail and how to start pattern matching it and raise red flags.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a great sell. We didn't have the technology to really do any of it just yet, but I was painting that picture to a point where these schools were super interested. So that had to be my sell. March 2020 comes, we get smacked in the face with COVID. We had all these contracts. I was flying out to Finland because we had contracts closed in like late March, early April.
So you were outside the U.S. too.
Well, so I was about to go, like had these contracts signed, and I think like the VP of the school was like, "Hey, we just had our first case of COVID. Maybe it's not the best time for you to come. Let's let this die off." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." And then this happens, right? So we had to. It was a real smack in the face, but I realized, all right, look, I'm either gonna stop doing this or get back to my roots here and create a platform for the students. And Fenu was really the first person to say to me, "Look, this is what you're building. This is your thesis. This is your value add into the market. Stop shying away from it. Like, you have to identify and highlight this." And it's not like you're condoning inappropriate behavior. You're highlighting what's going on. There's a root cause for why students feel the need to cheat. And there's a couple reasons why. And the only way to really identify that and solve that problem is to allow people to act in ways they actually want to act. And that's how we leverage this technology now, right? So it's a platform for students to behave in ways that are very organic, but our attempt is to reshape what learning looks like in the future to include collaboration and to include this additional communication. So he, like I said, I love giving this kid credit because he's a special dude. He was the one that said to me, "You have to do this. If you want to scale this thing, this is the way you go." And he was right. And here we are today. We're growing faster than we ever have, and it's because we sort of look it right in the face.
No, that conversation was March 2020.
No, that conversation was like summer of 2020. Like, I was still battling with this whole. It was almost like a what do you call it? Like a personality. Like, I didn't know who I was in terms of like the technology or what I wanted to be. And he's like, "Look, you look at all these technologies. This is what you're doing. So why not be very upfront about it? Like, as a student, I want to know exactly what I can and cannot do on this platform." And so that, yeah, like I said, that conversation was pretty pivotal for us.
All right, let's back up for a second.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to put a timeline together here too. So COVID hits March 2020. You have been around for 3 years.
Been around for about, a little like 2.5.
The idea was concepted 3 years before, and then kind of born like 2 years before. Okay.
Right.
So you were going campus to campus to like try to get one college at a time, and you were going specifically to the departments there. So you were going to like the actual administration.
So when I was doing the college tours when I was a senior, I was B2C. So I started out, I had no clue what I wanted to do in terms of like monetization and really grow a business. I was like, "Oh, we look like Tinder, we're gonna monetize like Tinder," and that was really the extent of what I really thought. And so I didn't put too much effort into that. I was like, all right, I want to scale this platform and get users on it. It was only until we ran into almost like a brick wall, and I pitched a fund who didn't really understand the business model, and neither did I in the beginning, right? So I was like, I don't know what to tell you.
Was it was ads?
It was, I was like, "Oh, we're going to, don't worry, we're going to have 1 million users and we'll have ads." And look, that is a lucrative
sounds good
option when you get there, and it should not be discredited because it is real. But until you have those users, there has to be a critical mass point that you achieve, and you got to make money before that. So anyway.
What do you mean by critical mass point?
Like, you don't want to sacrifice an app's UX or UI by flooding it with ads if you have 10,000 users, right? You have to treat those like they're babies and really cherish them. And so if you lose them early on, you may never get them back or gain their trust again. So,
and just to make sure people understand, UX, UI is user experience and user interface. So
right.
What you see.
Yeah, so it's what you see and sort of what you do and what you feel when you're on a platform. So it's the buttons you click, it's how they're laid out, it's where they bring you. And like I said, with an advertisement, if it gets very cheesy and you see 3 posts and every other post is an ad, that's a problem. So anyway,
spammy.
It's very spammy, and you don't want to have that reputation early on. So I think what ended up happening was I was pitching, and there was a judge in the room that really liked the idea, but nobody else did. And they were like, "I wonder if there's a way for..." Oh no, I'm sorry. I approached them and said, "Hey, what if I pitched it like this? What if I pitched it like a technology that was a retention tool for the schools and they could partner with us?" And she paused and said, "I wish you pitched that idea yesterday." And so for me, I was like, all right, bam, that's the light bulb. I'm going to pursue this. ended up not necessarily working, and that could just be because I wasn't the person for the job. I think I identified that pretty well.
When was this?
This was 2019.
Okay.
Like I took about a year of solid B2B selling. Yeah. And the life cycle or the sales cycle of a school is fucking brutal, man. It is long, and you never really know when you reach the point, like the point of actually closing one, because you're talking to so many people.
Do you know who the decision maker is?
The decision maker is different at every school, and it depends sort of what you're trying to sell. Like, what do you want to blank? Like, because there's different budgets in different sectors of the school, right? So where do you fall? And if you don't know where you fall, and honestly, we really didn't. Like, we were pitching to VPs of enrollment or academic success. Nobody really knew who wanted to take us, type of thing. So it was a cool sell. Technology would have been great if we built it out, but we committed to something else. So, and then I found Fenu and we talked about it. But yeah, that was pretty much that story.
So how many when Corona hit? How many active users did you have?
So this is where it gets interesting, right? So I pretty much consider the app dead at a point. Like there was a point in time, like the 2019, where my focus wasn't on users on the app. It was more so selling into the schools. So I wasn't putting any money into marketing. I really wasn't tracking app usage or app downloads, things like that, because it becomes an ego thing too. Like you don't want to look because you know it's bad. Yeah. So I sort of just like, all right, fuck it. It's not.
You also weren't selling to them. You were trying to change your partnership.
Right. So I was like, you know what? It's at 0. I'm going to call it 0. And then I had a conversation with somebody and they're like, look, you're not at 0. I mean, you've had 10,000 people download this app. Reach back out to them. Like try to revive those users instead of calling them dead. So that's
how do you do that? Because like that's easier said than done.
So this is the benefit to having an app as opposed to a physical product, right? You drive a download, you get some information about them, right? You get their emails, you get their numbers. Now what you can do, it's actually like it's very rare for somebody to delete an app off their phone. So you may stop using Stunited altogether because maybe you didn't find any use of it or whatever the reason is. I now have the ability to continuously market to you through push notifications, through emails. And so it may be a year down the road where you're like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to try this app out again. And the interface is completely different. The purpose is different. The app is flooded with people actually using it. You're back on. So the way you revive these users is consistently just dripping in campaigns. And that can be email, it could be social media, it could be through the app itself. So I don't really consider anybody ever dead, but at the time I did, which was probably a huge mistake I was making, and sort of thank God I corrected that.
And so beginning of Corona, you still hadn't corrected that though. You were still working directly with the school. So Corona hits, what's your reaction?
Corona hits and I immediately was like, shit, this isn't good. And then I was like, shit, this is really good, because now students are so confused and they're frustrated and they're way more inclined to try newer technologies. So like they're almost in a desperate state. So like you throw them a new technology and it sounds interesting, sounds cool, fuck it, I'll try it out. Whereas a year or so ago, they may not have. So it was to our advantage. I just didn't realize it in the very beginning. But that's really why I wanted to do this whole relaunch in July. And essentially, it was like our rebirth of Stunited.
Well, yeah, and the rebirth of it where you're focusing again on the student side and like actually getting them to use it. The whole concept of getting one person's strength to barter with another person's strength. When people left campuses and in some cases aren't even back on campus now, does some of that go out the window because they're literally like not together and not passing each other in the hallway? Or is it actually increased because they're talking to each other all the time on text and stuff like, hey, what are we doing about this class or whatever?
So a couple things about that, right? Number one, I think it increases communication, right? Because you don't have anything. You don't sit in a classroom. You have no option to talk to the person next to you. So you rely on technology. It's almost like it's an inevitability, right? Whether it's ours or something else, technology is going to be at the forefront of education. And so we aim to sort of be at the top. But number two, and people have sort of confronted me with this, said, all right, well, look, you're growing in COVID, but what happens when people go back to school? They may not need your technology. And
why wouldn't they need your technology?
So my point to that, because they can talk in person, right? So they don't need to talk online or find people to sort of barter with. And I understand the point, but look at any other social media. Like we want to talk through our phones nowadays. That's just how it is. I could easily sit in a coffee shop and find a girl to talk to, but no, I'd rather go on Tinder because it's much easier. I could talk to somebody about whatever the fuck I'm doing, but no, I'd rather post a Facebook post, or I'd rather tweet about it. So
also, how many friends, think about this, how many average friends does the decently social, regular, average Joe individual have? Like, let's say there's 5 or 6 that they're comfortable, like, you know, just going to and like, hey, what's up, man? I'm thinking about this thing or whatever.
Right.
What are the chances that within there the strengths are going to be different or going to have something that offsets what they need? I mean, a lot of times in my own college experience, I remember I would go to people who I never talked to.
Yeah.
You know, we just took a class together. I'd be like, yo, you're good at this. Like, you want to help me out? Or like, I'll help you with this. Like, I did it all the time.
Yeah.
So I get it. And it very often was not that first degree of separation. Like, your friends right there. So I think either way, it's true. But your point that, yeah, people want to just be like, all right, what does the data tell me is right there at my fingertips? Bang, done. I'm sitting here eating my dinner, and in between, you know, chews, I know that this dude is over in that building over there, and he can help me out write this paper.
Yep. And you have to realize also, what you used to do in terms of just approaching a stranger and asking for help takes a lot of balls, and not a lot of people would do that. They would much rather hop on their phone and post a proposal on Stunited to say, hey, I need help with a writing assignment. These are the details. This is what I'm willing to give up in exchange. Bam, post. And what this also allows me to do as a user is it puts the burden of work on somebody else. I posted, now it's somebody else's job to approach me and inquire about my proposal. So it makes you feel a lot better about yourself. Your job is complete by posting that. You don't have to find the help, but the help's going to come to you. And that's a relief. And I think that's where our big value add is in terms of like the market.
Yeah, it's no different than how Angie's List disrupted things. Or, I mean, look, it's internet technology in that way. Things that create a community where people can go and find it easily and have their answer immediately, and also have choice, and choices that they wouldn't have if they didn't have to put tremendous effort into it themselves. They're going to take every time.
Right.
And it's not even just, I know there's a piece of it where, you know, our generation is less likely to walk up to somebody in the coffee shop, like you said, or walk up to somebody in the bar, or walk up to someone in a building and say, what's up, which is a little sad in some ways. But in other ways, it's like, it's because we've learned how to be more tactical about it. There are 2 sides to it. You know, I always talk about the negative side, but the positive side is like, we have a higher expectation of what we're going to be able to get for the lowest amount of our effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, man. It's the way the world is sort of turning. And I was listening to a Clubhouse chat yesterday, and they were actually talking about education and marketplaces. And I was like, fuck, I was like raising my hands trying to get in. Yeah, I was like, oh my god. And the point that the moderator brought up was like, the greatest asset that we have on this earth isn't houses in terms of Airbnb. It isn't cars in terms of Uber. It's human intellect. And if we can start to learn how to leverage and barter intellectual skills, there's an infinite amount of that, right? So as long as you can capture it and put it into one platform or app, you have a sound product. And that's really what our goal is. Every problem that you have, somebody can solve that on this earth, right? There's one person at least that knows how to do what you're struggling with very easily. And if we can sort of create that community, we have something going here, and that's what we're striving to do.
And you're hitting a bigger point there too, that goes far beyond any one app or any one thing. This is really important. When we got this connectivity with the internet being invented, it's not like social media was around right away. And then social media comes with Internet 2.0, and now everyone has these communities, these set 3-4 places where everyone goes to, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. And there's a lot of arguments around that because everyone puts their opinions on there. And that goes from everything that doesn't matter or is funny all the way to the serious things that then people want to tear each other apart, which is what we pay the most attention to.
Yeah.
In reality, though, with all this conversation around about, well, how do you legislate some of these platforms if you're worried about deplatforming people and the power these companies have, I think one of the things that needs to be talked about more. I know we talked about it on the last episode, but you know, when people talk about like the Section 230 thing with the social media platforms, which quite simply takes away some of the protections they have now to be able to just do what they want and eliminate users or keep users, whatever. If you did this kind of stuff, you would probably be counterintuitive to the community. And what I mean by that is, yeah, would you eliminate some of the bad action that happens, like whether people are being deplatformed or speech is being suppressed? Sure. But would you also therefore then eliminate a lot of the negative tearing at each other's necks because people don't want to get kicked off because the platform has to protect themselves? Sure. But at the end of the day, you're going to eliminate so much of it that you're going to create less information spread there, good, bad, and indifferent. It's like you take away the bad, but you rip a lot of good away with it too. So people exchange ideas less, and then maybe they go to those communities less, and then over time those communities fade.
Right.
So even when you're talking about your app here, you talk about the idea of like leaning in on something like, oh, well, you're cheating or whatever. Okay. That's what people are going there for.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm cheating on this test or mostly stuff like that. It's more like I am literally trying to figure out, okay, I'm strong here, I'm weak here. I'd like to help plug my weakness and increase my strength by helping out other people too. So I pay into the app and I can lean into what's good about what I'm doing here. So you give, it's like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is you give people the freedom to go after the things that they want to and make their own personal moral decisions in that way.
I mean, that's exactly it too. It's also like, it's like the opportunity cost, right? What should I be, what is better for me to do? Is it focus on the assignment that I have for my major, right? In my biology major, and I have a biology assignment coming up, or do I have to waste my time writing a nonsense paper for my writing intensive class? Or could I devote all of my time here and barter something else in exchange for that writing help? So I think it's a great thing, and I think it's a reflection of like what happens in the real world. If I'm not good, say at technology, like I'm not, am I going to go struggle to try to learn it and not do it as well as somebody else? Or am I going to align myself with people that can? And that's how great businesses are built, you know? So
that's how you built yours.
Right, exactly. So I don't understand why there's such a negative connotation to students working together, you know? Even if it's one student doing one thing and the other student doing another thing. Like, that's where the strengths are, so cater towards that, you know?
Could you imagine if Steve Jobs had spent 20 years trying to learn how to code like Steve Wozniak?
Right.
There'd be no Apple.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look, to an extent, you don't want kids just ignoring all the assignments that they don't want to do, because in life, you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. But learning how to network and job allocate, I think, are huge skills that aren't honed in on enough.
I don't know what the term is. People always talk about like zero-sum game, and then there's other offshoots of that describe like sum and sum or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know those. I don't want to get lost in the minutia. But overall, easy point is that whenever you are disrupting anything or creating something new, just by the law of averages of numbers in society and people, it will never be 100% good.
Right.
It's how it is.
Right.
Now, is the number 10 bad? Or is it 30 bad?
Yeah.
Or is it 70 bad? There's levels to it, and you have to have some sort of like measuring stick in your head towards that. But there is an optimal trade-off to where the good is outweighing the bad. And I don't even know, looking at yours, because I haven't actually sat down and like been like, well, how much is this cheating going to hurt them or whatever. But if I would imagine you doing long-term, you know, simulations on your business model and on how people would use this if you had the most amount of downloads or number of downloads you could possibly get. You're looking at it like, okay, well, how much does this mean people are literally not going to do stuff in school versus how much is it like people adding value into the app too because they are incentivized to do that? You're not just going to take on the app, you have to give.
Yeah.
How much is that going to then over delta their strengths and then make them even better?
Yeah, and that's a huge point that we get across too, is like the day that you truly know something is when you can teach it to somebody else. You know, so if you're forced to do that on a platform, you start to hone it. You're not only benefiting the person across the table, you're benefiting yourself. And if you think of it like a traditional tutoring situation where only one student is benefiting, right? I'm the student, I'm getting help from you, you're not a student. For us, we're doubling that. We're helping two students where you're only helping one. I'm getting the help, you're giving the help, and you're honing in on your skills. Plus, you're making money doing it. So in terms of the economy of students, we are 2 times better than normal, services or skill platforms like that. So
Wow. Well, I want to get back to the timeline because we kind of went around in a circle there, and the key mass here was March 2020 because that's where the shift happened. So you had been thinking before then that in your mind the app was dead, as you said, because you weren't looking at it like, how many users am I getting? How much are they actually using it? You were trying to partner with schools. So you think back to that conversation with Fenu. You flip it over to, okay, we're going to go straight to the students now. That happened in the summer. So I guess the whole spring semester was you just trying to figure it out?
Spring semester as in...
Like 2020,
spring 2020.
Corona.
So yeah, I mean that was still, we were still holding on to the B2B sell. Like we were still talking to these schools and saying, well, look, maybe we'll sign these contracts in the fall. The second version of the app still wasn't ready, so I wasn't selling directly to the students. And it's also like, it was like an embarrassment thing too. And this is something where as a founder, you have to let go of. Like I was like, oh shit, I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm still not where I wanted to be. I got to start pitching again to the same organizations and the frats and the sororities that I've already talked to 3 times. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. So I want to go to the schools because, wow, look at me now. I'm way better than I once was. And then you realize, like, all right, look, if I want to make this thing work, I'm going to have to humble myself. And so I finally had that conversation, and it was scary. Like, when I did have the conversation with Fenu, we're taking a very contrarian and bold stance in something that's really not talked about enough, which is the cheating. So I was like, all right, well, how are people going to, perceive me as a person and the platform? Like, I don't want to be known as just some scumbag that wants to advocate cheating, because that's not who I am. So it was a bit nerving, but it ended up working out. And now, like I said, we're doubling down on, what we've seen.
So you go into the fall, you go back to the students, and how many active users are you at now?
So we,
if you can't tell me that, no problem.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I'm just trying to think. We hit 1,000 actives in November, I think. So it took us a little bit of time. And then December, we hit 2,500. And then January, when we were supposed to have a down month because of winter break, so we expected actually a decrease in usage, we hit our all-time high, which is 3,000 actives right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And
how many campuses approximately?
I mean, we've probably had a couple hundred individual campuses on the app itself. So,
well, actually, that's a really good point. I can't believe I didn't even think of this. It's not campus centric.
No, it's not. But we've had people from, actually a problem we're experiencing right now is we have people from other countries on the app, and we don't have data servers over there. So like we have people from India and China saying, hey, what's going on with my messages? They're not loading. And I've come back to my developers and they're like, we can't control that right now. Like, unless you want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in expansion, we're gonna have to sort of let them slide right now. And it's a hard thing to have to do, but you keep them in the loop. But it's exciting.
I need to be dumb for a minute here.
Go ahead, man.
Because like this is just something I always take for granted and never ask about. But the whole server situation, we just don't think about it, right? You use Instagram, I use Instagram, we use Twitter, whatever. We go on it, it's just like it's there, and then like when it's down, it's like what the fuck. But think about the biggest apps and the amount of computational power they have to have and the reach that has to have to deliver to people all over the world. It's crazy.
Crazy.
You can't just have, and this is what I don't fully understand, never research. You can't just have that set up out of one place, though. I understand. Like, you have to have hubs of it so that through the network it's actually connected. So when you're talking about the international students,
right,
you don't have set up physical networks over there. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, look, it's relatively easy to do. It's just very expensive. Like to host data, I mean, we use AWS for data storage, but it's, again, that's just another step where I'm spending money. Is it worth it, right? If 0.01% of my users are on this app and they're in India, do I spend all this money to cater towards that one person? So it is going to have to happen eventually. Right now is not the time. And once we do pull that trigger, like I said, it's not a hard thing to do. It's just very expensive.
It's expensive. Yeah, because you're saying you can do it all in the cloud pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So, and I wasn't even sure about that because I know a lot gets done on AWS especially, but
a lot.
Still, like, people think about it because you think about how big it could get. Like, I think about Instagram, and for me, it's hard to concept that they could take care of all that in the cloud. But in reality, it's kind of more convenient that way, and it's also probably a little bit better because whenever you're taking something out of that's literally not in hardware, I mean, the number of problems you can run into decreases.
Like that was the whole thing about TikTok, right? When everyone was so afraid about our data for TikTok was being held and stored in AWS in America. I mean, that being said, like ByteDance owns that technically, so they could have had the rights to see it.
I want to talk about this. Keep going.
I mean, look, and yeah, we'll talk about it to the extent of what I know. But that's pretty much where the data was held here, and it's still held here. What is gonna come of it, I don't know, and I think this is where the conversation is probably gonna go. If you think that TikTok is the only company selling quote unquote data to other countries, you're fairly mistaken.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. So that whole narrative just didn't make sense to me. You know,
it's about what the data is.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me about TikTok, because technologically you're correct. There's another term for it. Mike Laxamana was going over it, but it's like, I forget what it is, so I'm not going to say it. But to be able to remove that data undetected and take it to China, pretty much, which is what people talk about because ByteDance owns TikTok and ByteDance is a Chinese company. The amount of computational power you would need is ridiculous. And it's like, it's impossible, some people say. My whole thing is that there's also a lot of technology that we don't know about. And there are a lot of, you don't know what you don't know. And obviously the Chinese government is gung-ho on absolutely investing like crazy into technology. It's their priority. And they, very smartly, they use the systems to their advantages. They stole IP in that country from around the world for years and years and years, still do to this day. They've been a little bit more held in check over the last 5-6 years, whatever on that, but it's still happening. So they've then taken that technology and built on top of it. So assuming that they can't get into it, yeah, it is held here. The problem is if that government can get a hold of that, the data you're giving on TikTok, it's not to say like when you give your data of your name, your address, your, God forbid, your social security number, like your physical profile or whatever. Great. Like that's not awesome too, to get in the wrong hands. I'm not arguing that like that doesn't matter. What I'm saying is with TikTok, you can get a visual representation. You can build machine learning technology that reads for different geographies and gets intel through that. I'm talking through trillions of permutations, throwing it at like different videos that come up there. And I always use the example back in 2001, 2002, when our government was hunting bin Laden. And they kept on bombing I forget the name of the mountains out there in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but they kept on bombing those mountains in strategic places. The way that they were figuring out where he was
Crazy.
Is they were using technology. This fucking guy would take a video in front of a cave wall.
Yeah.
And they would have, in 2001, 2002, they had technology that could read the elements in the cave wall and then use latitude and longitude to determine almost down to the exact spot where that cave might be. And they kept on bombing them and supposedly coming close. But if we had that technology then, imagine what technology that reads for physical surroundings can do now.
And I heard that story too, and it's pretty amazing. Like this is a long time after that. Like we're 20 years past 2001, which is fucking crazy. There was an ad that this is pretty creepy. There was a Medium post, and the guy that was like, "This is the creepiest ad I've ever seen," and it was an advertisement for like a cat or like a nightstand. The advertisement was in his room, like his actual room. So they've been taking and collecting, I guess, images, right? Through like, what does Fenu call it?
Oh my God, the volumetric.
Yeah. So whatever they're taking, think of like they're taking little itty bitty pictures of his room through his phone, and they literally crafted up his entire fucking room. And this guy was looking at it, and it's fucking crazy. And he like showed the picture, and he's like, "This is my room with a nightstand in it." So. Is that freaky? Yeah, I think so. But what's also a little bit freaky is the thing with TikTok. They are starting to know you better than you know yourself, right? They're showing you a video that if you were to pick it out of a collage of 10, you wouldn't think you would like that, but they're going to show it to you because they know you're going to like it, and then you end up liking it. So that when technology starts to learn you a little bit better than you know yourself, that's when it starts to get a little freaky. So just be aware. I think at the end of the day, like, people get too freaked out about this stuff. The only thing you can do is just be very self-aware and understand what's going on, and don't let things sort of take over too much.
You wonder what the future holds, though. That is the great and it's an unknown. So like you gotta be blissfully, maybe not blissfully, but there's only so much you can control, right? But one of my buddies, I want to be careful how I say this. I'm not gonna give away where he works or in what capacity for obvious reasons. So people are gonna have to take this as a little bit of a little bit of faith. But one of my buddies who would know explained that there is a, not necessarily constitutionally, like it wouldn't be used against you, you would think and hope, but there is a backdoor to all the data you have ever put out there, meaning the government has an ability with each of these companies to get in and get that if they needed it. Now, could they actually use it in a court of law? No, but who the fuck, you think about the worst case scenarios and evil, and people throw around words like tyranny and stuff. You don't know what the future holds, and there are a lot of bells that have already been rung, and they're not going to be unrung. But you talk about awareness. I agree with you. People have to be more aware of what they're doing, and I also agree with you, sadly, that there is only so much you can do about it.
Yeah. That's the thing too. Like, look, at the end of the day, a lot of this data right now, and look, I'm not saying that it can't ever happen. It's not being used maliciously, right? It's being used to make money. And what that looks like is selling you something that you're probably going to like. So it's throwing you an advertisement that they know is something you're going to buy, or it's persuading you to like something that you maybe didn't like a year ago. So then you buy it. And I think people get way too caught up in they're going to try to manipulate us to then take over in terms of like a government takeover. But thinking like that, honestly, like you said, there's not much you can do about it. So thinking like that and like the worst case scenario mindset, what's really the point? Like, be very aware, but at the end of the day, what's the point of thinking everything is going to go to shit? I don't know. That's just not my mindset. So I don't get when people get so bent out of shape about it.
Well, a step below that is your day-to-day as far as like how you feel.
Yeah.
And looking at traditional marketing and advertising, they've always been trying to sell people one thing. They've been trying to sell them happiness. See yourself in the product they sell you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you buy that thing, which is what they want you to do, the psychology of it. You're going to be happier because of it, because you're getting a utility, you're getting something you want, something you need, something that makes you feel good, something that could even define you a little bit. And I think one of the things that maybe people don't put their finger on, because we don't think about it, we just know how we feel, is that with all the constant in-your-face advertising that is then perfectly targeted at you and has these eerie representations of things that, oh my God, I was just talking about that.
Yeah.
With my mom 10 minutes ago, and now here it is
right.
on an ad. And then the constant hamster wheel you're on and the quick ability to be able to make a buying decision. Bang, bang, done. Mm-hmm. 2 clicks. A lot of people get stuck in that cycle, and it becomes that hamster wheel, like I said.
Yeah.
And then life keeps going on, and suddenly 6 months goes by, a year goes by, they're still on the same hamster wheel. They're buying the same shit. They're getting stuff thrown at them that they say, I'm not going to buy anything, and then they do because it's thrown in their face, even when they say, I'm annoyed at this type of advertisement. And what's happening is they continue to retreat from the world. Because in the phone, they see everything that speaks to them already. So who the fuck around you is going to speak to you better than that?
Nobody.
And then they're unhappy.
Yep.
And that's a scary thing, because we talk about unhappiness with social media, and we talk about it because of how people talk on social media and how people act. And it's true, 100% true. But what about all the other things in there that keep us in those apps and keep us drawn to make decisions or do things or feel things that then we don't want to?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing that the advertising industry has to think about here. I don't think they're gonna, but you're seeing a lot of people who may not be able to put their finger on it, but that's part of the reason they're so upset all the time.
I mean, it's a great point. And aside from even advertisements, the fact that people get happier to see, for example, a post do well on a social media than actually get praise from somebody in person is a problem. Or the fact that I would rather have a conversation through Twitter or through even Clubhouse than talk to somebody one-on-one without thinking about my phone is a problem. And we all experience it. So I think that addiction really takes us away from what true peace and happiness is. And You got to get back to your roots and find that outside of the phone. And it's hard. It's very hard because even having a conversation, and I'm 25 years old, having a conversation with somebody else without thinking every 10 seconds or so, or what's going on TikTok or what's going on social media is hard to do, you know? Like I look back and think about it like this. Sometimes I'll lay in bed at night and I'll sort of like reflect on the day and what are the big focus points. And it's sometimes like things I did on my phone and I can't even remember conversations I had with my parents or with other people or what I even did during that day, which is fucking scary, man. And even for myself, I've like admitted that and I really want to get back to enjoying life outside of my phone.
I'm glad you got self-awareness on that.
Yeah, me too.
and I hope I have a similar level of it, but your life is in there. Everything you do. It's how you're connected to people, which is what we inherently want to do all the time. It is how we organize things. It's an expectation. I mean, when someone doesn't have a smartphone, like forget just saying iPhone, it's like, the fuck is wrong with you?
What's wrong? Seriously, what's wrong with this person?
And it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status either. It's like, well, no, you must have that.
Right.
Like we've added these things over time. So at the beginning, it was you had to have food. And then pretty quickly it turned to, well, you better have shelter too. Yeah. And then you had to have water and oxygen. That was a prerequisite, obviously. So you have those four things. And then at some point, there's this long period of time where a bunch of little things got added. You know, you need the horse to get around. Oh, fuck, we made a wheel. Oh, my God, we have fire now. We need that to cook so we can have meat. All these little things got added that weren't necessarily like life or death. And then electricity got added. Yep. And electricity became a thing that once you got used to it, it was life or death. Yeah, literally. At some point here, we took the next step and we added, I don't know whether you want to call it Wi-Fi or mobile or both. And probably both in one thing. But we are now at a point where most people, perhaps with the exception of people who are extremely old or who were, raised in the Amish community or something like that, they don't understand how they can exist without having, an actual access to a data-oriented or Wi-Fi-oriented mobile device that stores all of their information and keeps their day afloat.
And like I envy them, Like I envy my grandparents that can find true joy in having a nothing conversation. And like that's something that I really have to get better at. Like I've always, right now especially, I think we're at an age where the only thing I want to focus on is bettering myself or doing something that can, propel me into a better financial situation, right? So if the conversation is going to be beneficial in terms of business or in terms of knowledge, I'll have that. But if we're talking about the movie we just saw or the color of this table, I don't give a shit. And that's a problem. Like, why can't I just enjoy sitting down and talking to you about nothing? And I see my grandparents do it. And I finally tried one day. Like, I threw my phone aside to the point where like I'm so addicted I can't even have it in arm's reach or else I'll reach for it. And we just talked about nothing. And it was like a really blissful time and conversation. And I'm like, wow, I can do this. That's the thing about the phone, I think is sure, it's definitely an addiction, but it's easy to quit. Like if I never start my day with my phone, as in it's locked or I don't touch it till 12 o'clock, I feel fucking great. Whereas if I was addicted to a drug, I would need that or else I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. So that there is hope, right? Like you can very easily detach yourself from the phone, just set some standards and do it long enough to the point where you realize I don't need to be on it 24/7.
I don't want to get off that phone point, but I do want to side note the example you were giving about your grandparents. I think one place you could give yourself more credit is it also has to do with where you are in your life. Yeah. You're in your 20s. You're an entrepreneur. You've been a builder for years. You are trying to explode something. Yeah. You are in a constant state that you want to be in, paradoxically, of crisis, right? Yeah. You are trying to get something off the ground. It's iteration, failure, iteration, failure, success, failure, all the way to where it's like, oh my God, we did it, right? Yeah. So you're also trying to better yourself all the time. You're trying to know more information about things that are totally peripheral. I don't know if I used that right, but to what on the periphery of what you're doing. So in your mind, that time transactionally, and it's not to say like, fuck you, grandma, I don't want to talk to you. Like that's not the point. Yeah. But transactionally in your head, you're like, well, what am I getting out of this? right? Like, what am I learning right now? If I'm talking about what the weather's doing outside, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, that's 15 minutes of my day I could have studied, like, where Sequoia's investing next.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's a great point. And then also it's the same thing where, like, even if I am talking about business, I want to talk to somebody that is benefiting me in terms of, like, can provide me some sort of knowledge that I didn't have. So if it's going to be a conversation, and again, this sounds so, like, arrogant, but if it's going to be a conversation about me, there's no value add after it. Like, they're just so, either A, they don't really care, or they're kind of just interested in hearing me talk. They're not going to provide any sort of value. And it's like, oh, how's the app? Like, how many users? Or are you getting more users? And, you know, are you the like? And it's just like a boring conversation. I hate that, and I would much rather talk about nothing or just not have a conversation at all. Which again is a shame. Like, if somebody is genuinely interested in hearing you speak about something, have a conversation with them. Like, I shoo away my parents all the time about it because I'm just like, you're not gonna get it. So, like, what's the point of having this conversation? I just say, yo, it's going well. That's it.
I do that too.
Yeah.
It's and it is something I think about. I got to work on, and it sounds like you do too. But that's a lot of us. You know, it's a generational thing though.
We're admitting it though.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the first step, right?
It is, yeah.
It's like the 12-step process or whatever.
Yeah.
No, that's like AA or something.
I think something like that, yeah.
Something like that. We don't need to go that deep. But either way, you at least have the self-awareness to know that sometimes you do have to disconnect with your phone. So do you plan that out ahead of time? Do you say, like, all right, well, for 3 days next week, I'm not going to touch my phone. I'm not going to turn it on until 1 o'clock. Or are you more just like, sometimes it's like, all right, I'm just going to turn off and put it to the side?
So I have limits set on my apps, and I used to be very strict with it. But again, I think that the crazy part about this addiction is, like, once you start to slowly get back into it, you're back in, you're locked. Mm-hmm. So now I start my day, like, right back on my phone. I got to get back into that whole process of not touching any nonsense apps until 12 o'clock and then stopping that at 8 o'clock. But the problem is, like, for me, especially being on TikTok, that is essentially my business now. And so for me to not be on it, even if it's from, like, understanding the platform a bit better, right? Understanding what works and what doesn't work. I'm always doing research, quote unquote, but you get so sucked into the nonsense for hours and then watching girls twerk their ass, and that does not help. You know what I mean? Like, that's not beneficial to the business. And so I think that the
makes
point,
you feel good though.
Yeah, look, there's a time and a place for it. That's for sure. You got to realize, and I think have the conversation with yourself. Okay, am I on my phone for good reasons? And if it's a yes, I can continue. If it's no, throw it the fuck away and go do something else.
I was on TikTok in, like, March 2019. I was on there early, and at the time.
Damn.
At the time, like, I was working in the world. This was not the kind of place I could have an account, let alone do anything on it. But I love studying this stuff, and I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I knew I was getting more towards a world where it was like I was going to have to look at that shit. Yeah. So found this app, and I went in. I remember I had downloaded it, and I said, all right, I'm going to go in for 20 minutes tonight. Like, I got done all my shit. I'm like, then I'm going to go to bed. I looked up 3 hours and 10 minutes later. It's like 3 hours and 9 minutes.
Dude.
And I went, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it was me and all the 14 to 16-year-olds on there, and what was legal at the time, a bunch of people on Army bases, which then was discontinued by the Army for data purposes, which is kind of what we talked about earlier. Like, the U.S. government get a little scared about that, and I understand that. But, you know, they were all just lip syncing, and it was like random shit. It was the first iteration out of the Musical.ly app, which they had taken and now changed it to the name to TikTok. But I looked at this and I said, holy shit, they built the perfect app. And I remember hitting up a bunch of people I knew, especially in the age range of like 20 to 22, and saying, who had a talent.
Yeah. Stop
everything you're doing. Delete the other apps. Mm-hmm. Don't even stay on YouTube if you're doing a little bit of shit there. We'll get back to that. Get on TikTok right now. And they would all be like, you're full of shit. Like, this is so stupid. It's for the kids. I said, what social... And Clubhouse is a different story. We can talk about that later. But what social media app has not been driven by 14 to 16-year-olds? Even Facebook, which started specifically on college campuses, when they opened that fucker up, the way it really went was all the 14 to 16-year-olds who were young in high school ran to that app.
Yeah, it was... It was me. I remember being like in 8th grade and like not being cool enough or old enough to be on Facebook yet, because that's where all the high schoolers were. And then I was like, shit, man, I got to get on Facebook because I want to be cool. I'm on MySpace right now, but I'm not there yet. I'm not at the level of Facebook yet, which sucks.
Well, MySpace was the first example before Facebook. That was like really heavy for like 8th graders. Like 7th and 8th grade, that was like the sweet spot. And then 9th and 10th grade loved it too. And I was too young for it. I guess I was like 4th grade or whatever. But I looked at this and I'm like, the other thing is you don't leave. Yeah. They designed an app where it's these small bites of oxytocin. Every video, whatever the hormone is, serotonin, one of them, the good one. Yeah. Both of them are good, but whatever one is.
Dopamine or some shit.
Dopamine, that's it. That's it. It's one of them. Yeah. It's all these little bites of it that you're like, oh, I'll do one more. Oh, I'll do one more. Yeah. Oh, I'll do one more. It's like a slot machine. And so I went to the Wikipedia page, and this is not there anymore, at least last we checked. But the Wikipedia page back then was small for TikTok. Mm-hmm. So it was like a nascent app. Yeah. And one of the things it said there was that blank studies, and it listed all this stuff conducted over the past year, have concluded that TikTok is one of the most highly addictive things ever created. And then it had quotes. That's crazy. Of like here. And so China had been, I think their app was called Douyin for TikTok instead. Yeah. They had limited, they like mandated some limits on its use.
That's interesting.
For certain ages. Crazy. I don't remember the details, so I don't want to say. I hope I can still find that, but it's not there anymore. And I was like, oh man, all the apps are addictive. They know what they're doing. But I'm like, this is going to take over because they also perfectly atoned for all the sins of Vine and all the sins of Instagram with sizing and not being convenient for a phone with video content. Yeah. So they took Vine, who wanted to make no business model and had this very limited creativity of 6 seconds, and said, okay, we're not going to go crazy here, but we're going to give people a little bit more range. Yep. We're going to give them a nicer interface. And by the way, you want to talk about the best marketing of all time? The download thing where you can just download videos right into your roll that have the left to right bottom corner, left top corner, right bottom corner name on it. Greatest thing I've ever seen.
So I want to talk about that. I think that's probably one of the greatest viral growth strategies that anyone has ever done, right? So, and I use this sort of tactic as something to mirror for myself, right? When somebody asks me as a founder of an app, what are your tactics for growth, right? Influencer marketing is great. Using and leveraging UACs is great.
What's a UAC?
A user acquisition channel. So like Google Ads, Apple Search, whatever it is. But you need something a little bit different and stickier. PayPal has a great one, right? They say, get a friend on the app, pay you $5. Easy, said and done. Robinhood will give you free stock. Like, this is very simple. But what TikTok does is, first of all, they don't have to pay for it. So that's fantastic. And it makes it very easy for me. I'm increasing my value because now I can post more content on another page, and you are automatically receiving clout from that. So from Stunited standpoint, I want to be able to leverage that and say, okay, look, you wrote a proposal in Stunited, you click that share button, you can share it right to your LinkedIn or share it right to your Instagram. And every time you do it, like you mentioned, you're going to see a little Stunited logo in that. And every time somebody sees that, it sparks interest. So yeah, I think that's a genius tactic, and I'm curious to know why other social medias don't do it, and they almost go the opposite route, where they they'll shut down the ability for you to share a tweet somewhere else, and it's a little weird. But I know I heard a podcast that, like Instagram, for example, or I think it was the opposite, Twitter shut down the ability to preview screen in Instagram. Like, you just see the link now. And there's like a reason for that. I forget who did it first. I think Facebook might have done it to Twitter first, and then they sort of gave it right back to them. And it crushes the UI, because now all you see is a bunch of links, whereas you used to see a nice looking preview of the picture. So interesting. It's an interesting tactic, and more people should do it.
All of the apps, like we said, are addictive inherently. We know this, but there's a way to make some more addictive than others. And I think that's where TikTok really doubled down and bet on themselves. Because you would think like, oh, they allow users to share on other places. doesn't that then drive attention to other apps and then allow those apps to then iterate and create their own, like Instagram tried to with Reels and everything?
Snapchat or
what? Sure, exactly. Snapchat's got what, the spotlight thing now.
This is something that's fucking cool if you want to talk about that. But,
go, let's do it.
So Instagram or Snapchat Spotlight essentially is the exact same thing as TikTok, right? It's literally identical. What they're doing right now is they are paying creators $1 million a day. Like literally $1 million a day. That's a pool of money that they're going to give to the top whatever videos, right? So think of it like a gigantic.
Oh wow! Okay.
Think of it like a gigantic For You page. You have to submit a video to get in. You can submit a video every 5 minutes. You can do it right now. Every 5 minutes, and if you get selected and you're a top tier video, you could split in that pot. I know people that are literally just taking their TikTok content, like they still have the watermark in it, throwing it on Snapchat and making millions of dollars. It's fucking nuts, dude. I know a 14-year-old that put up a video and made 20 grand off it. I'm like, you're 14
and it
years
had TikTok on it.
I'm like, you're 14, dude. Like, what are you going to do with that money? You know, like I think so. It's a tactic where they have the money, obviously. Is it going to work? Because I think.
Are you competing for likes in this case, pretty much?
I think you're competing for influencer loyalty. And that's the key to this. If you can treat your...
Well, no. I'm asking about Snapchat specifically. So like on Spotlight, you said they have $1 million pot per day. So that just means anyone can throw up a video. So the most viewed videos are the ones that get a certain percentage of the pot.
You're a Spotlight winner, they call it. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay, continue.
Yeah, and I think so the tactic there is you're competing to achieve, like I said, influencer loyalty. So for me, as an example, on TikTok, I'm so devoted to the app because it's a way for me to make money. If I found another app that's identical, that pays me 2x more, 3x more, I'm going.
That's fine.
If it's as easy.
That's what Vine had a problem with.
Right, and that's what TikTok's biggest problem is. They have their creator fund and they have the marketplace. They don't pay shit, and like that's a problem. YouTube is so sticky because influencers are on there making millions and millions of dollars. If you want to make millions and millions of dollars on TikTok, you have to be very active and do it yourself. You have to cut the brand deals. You have to get an agent. It's not TikTok paying you. And so that's like very, very rarely. And I think that's the like the secret sauce / the demise of some of these platforms.
That's how Instagram did it though. To grow, right? You pretty much had to be your own agent.
And I don't understand it. It's so like we're talking about Instagram, what they're doing with their UI is disgusting right now. Become the marketplace. Become the intermediary between me and a brand that you have identified as somebody that I could work with. Do it all for me. Take 50%. I don't give a shit. I'm still making money. You're missing out on such an opportunity, and I don't realize or understand why they're not. You know, it would be so much. I mean, who wouldn't they be able to reach out to? Hey, Nike. Hey, so and so. We have a great influencer for you that has 1 million followers. Use them right now. Okay, done.
And they can fact check the influencer personally.
Because they're going right through Instagram.
All the data.
It makes so much sense. It almost like makes too much sense. There has to be like a reason why they're not doing it.
I've never thought about that deeply enough. I like this topic though. This is very interesting. With Vine, just to circle back on that, why I was saying that, their problem was, I mean, they got bought by Twitter, I guess, like right away. But their founding group was very utopian. They never prioritized making money, which honorable thing in some ways, but it was more an arrogant thing where they were like, oh, it's great. Like money will come. There was no plan with it. So they didn't incentivize creators. And then you had all these creators born on there, like the Paul brothers, Amanda Cerny, what did they call it before Sway House? There was like the something 8 or something like that.
Yeah, I know,
Justin Roberts was in there.
Yeah, I forget.
I don't know if Justin Roberts, I think he was on it once it moved to Instagram, but like some of the, you know what I'm talking about.
Right, yeah.
So you had all these pods of great influencers that were born there. And I don't know which ones did this at the end, but there is a story that ran online towards the end of Vine where a bunch of the influencers banded together and met with Vine's senior team and said, look, we love this app. We want to stay here. We want to do this. Here's the money you have to pay because all these other apps are coming to us and asking to pay us. And YouTube was really coming at them big time. And I believe, actually, now I'm remembering, I think Instagram did come and pay them. So they never have that. We'll get back to that intermediary thing. Like they've never done that. That's interesting. But I think they did pay for some influencers. I'll fact check that afterwards. But Vine was just like, yeah, no. And then they died.
Yeah, it's you have to realize, and this is, again, goes back to, and I'm not just trying to plug what I'm doing, but like it goes back to me trying to scale mine. Who holds more value? Is it the person giving the help on the app, or is it the person getting? And for me, it's more so the giving, because the getting is going to come, right? Like you'll find students that are, holy shit, in a pinch, need help. If you don't have the supply when they get on the app, that's when you're fucked. But the demand is going to be there if you have the supply. And that's sort of, it's easier to market to them. So you have to treat these helpers like they are special, and that could mean paying them. That could mean making sure that they are satisfied with whatever is going on. If the UI has to be catered more towards them than it is on the other side, then so be it. And that's exactly how these social media should treat their golden children, these influencers, the reason why people are on their app on a consistent basis.
Now, you were saying that on TikTok, in order to make a lot of money, you have to be posting all the time and be on there. Why does that make a difference that you're going to make a lot of money there specifically?
Well, so I mean, I'm a big fan of, like, they always say content is king, but it's really good content is king. So if you're throwing 1,000 videos out every month and they're shitty videos, you're not going to go anywhere. So like, I don't get this narrative of, oh, I'm just going to keep posting and hope it sticks.
It's the Gary Vee narrative.
Right. And I get it to an extent, but also Gary Vee, you're putting out good content. Like, you're not throwing out shit. He wasn't, but he was also doing it during a time when nobody else was posting. So
sure,
if he was Gary Vee right now, he would get lost in the wash, right? If he was who he was 20 years ago. Because of how competitive it is.
Yeah, and I'll give him one there. I mean, different time too. You know, like he adjusted very well.
And he realized that. So anyway, I think what ends up happening is the For You page on TikTok or any sort of algorithm, think of it like a lottery, right? If you throw in more tickets, your chances of winning increase.
And for the few people listening that haven't ever been on the app, the For You page is basically like the main news feed you go to that puts accounts from around the world in there based on how the videos are doing in the algorithm.
Right. So the interface of TikTok is very simple. It's two feeds. It's the For You page, which is global and every video ever, and your friends page. The interesting part is the For You page is different for everybody. It's based upon your interests, and this is how they've learned who you are, which is also interesting. It's going to change for you on a consistent basis. I was so intrigued by this whole GameStop AMC bullshit that now the only thing that I see on my feed is stock trading tips and how to trade and stocks 101. So it's completely changed for me, and it's going to change in another week. Getting back to what we were saying, the better your odds are, and the more you throw at the For You page, the greater your chances are of making money. So
how do you make money though? And that's what I was confused on. Were you talking about going out and getting your own brand deals?
So there's a couple ways I think on TikTok, right? So TikTok actually has a creator fund. And if you get into the fund, which is relatively simple, I think you need like 10K followers, and then you submit your page and you can get in, they'll start paying you per view. And it's a little subjective, as in like a view from somebody in the US is more valuable than somebody in X company. So it's not a direct payout, like 1,000 views gets you $1. It's sort of subjective in that sense. But what I noticed, and again, I'm not the only person that noticed this, as soon as I was in the creator fund, I saw my videos have a huge decrease in views. So like, what are you really trying to, are you really just trying to put this facade up that you want to take care of your influencers, but you don't really want to pay us? Or were my videos just not doing well? And so I got back out, my videos started doing well again. I got back in, same thing happened. And so what I did was I posted a video while I was in, I got out, and I posted the same video again, and it literally did 10x what it did when I was in. So not saying that I found out and I exposed them, just didn't work for me. So how I make money is I have to start cutting my own brand deals. I reach out, or I have people reaching out to me and saying, hey, John, I really like your page. I want to promote a post with you. Okay, great. This is what I charge. This is the agreement. How would you like to move forward?
Yeah.
So if I wasn't active, and not to say that I have millions and millions of followers, but if I wasn't active, I would make no money on this app.
Right.
You know? And a lot of people aren't.
All right, there's a million things I want to touch there,
Yeah.
but let's give context too. Because what I really like about you is you find a way with stuff. You are very, very resourceful. You are constantly looking around at where attention is, where action is, and how you can add value there. And that's not even just like buzzword speak. That's what you do.
Thank you.
And so we still got to finish off. We got to where the active users are on Stunited and all that, which is great. And I still want to go back to a couple things there. But one of the really interesting things you did to adjust when Corona hit, while much of this was up in the air, because as you said, you still were selling the quote unquote B2B, going straight to the institutions until the summer. You were like, okay, well, I need to figure out some shit here, because obviously, like, we're in stagnation mode. You went on to TikTok. You started something entirely different, and you become a TikTok influencer.
Right,
and it's and your page is also really fucking good. Like, it's very like, I could see myself killing a couple hours on there and then wanting to kill you afterwards.
Yeah, right.
But tell people what your page is called and what you do, because when I tell you this has nothing to do with Stunited, it has absolutely nothing to do with Stunited.
Yeah, sure. So this is a funny story too. So it's February of 2020, and my dad and I are about to go out to eat in the city with my cousins. So we're all dressed pretty nice.
Where were you going?
Del Frisco's.
Attaboy.
Yeah. It was going to be a good night. He's making a Manhattan like he would do any other time we were about to go out. And he has a nice little setup in the basement. I said, let me film this on this app called TikTok that my sister told me to download.
It's going to the Chinese government.
Right,
Dad.
whatever.
Just
let me fucking film it. And let me see what I got. And so I filmed this little thing, and he likes Frank Sinatra. So I'm like, all right, let me throw a Frank Sinatra music song in the background.
That's the best part of your page.
Well, so I'll get to that too. We throw this video up. We get to dinner. It's like 10 o'clock. I check my phone, and I hit like 16,000 views, which at the time I was like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? That's crazy. I text my sister. I'm like, this is so funny. I check again. It's at like 30,000. And it's at 100,000. Then it's at 1 million. And today it's at like 8 million. So I got lucky in a sense with my first video, but I realized that this is what people want to see. So we kept doing it. And you mentioned Frank Sinatra. I throw Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, that sort of vibey music in the background of every one of my videos. And it consistently does pretty well, to the point where if I don't and I use like a modern day song or something like that, it fucking gets shut down. It does not do well at all. So we've, like I said, identified what works and what doesn't work. To now we have 670,000 followers, and all we do is make drinks, and it's fun. And I think what
you made a business out of this too.
Yeah, that's what my point is. Like, I identified pretty early that, like, look, we have a huge opportunity to make a lot of money making fucking drinks, right? And I told my dad that, and we had this sit down conversation where this was fun, but let's take this to the next level and let's come out with our own bourbon, which we did. And we sold out a barrel in like 2 days. It was nuts.
How did you put your own bourbon together?
So,
like, how fast did you? It sounds like you did that in like a night. Like, yeah, let's make a fucking bourbon tonight.
So again, man, I like to say that we got lucky with a lot of things with TikTok. I had a video that we used the bourbon called Burning Chair. Burning Chair was made by a very well-known winemaker called Dave Finney. So this dude has a distillery out in California called Savage & Cook. Sold his wine company. You ever hear the Prisoner wine?
No.
So he sold it to a big time winery, Gallo, for a couple $100 million. Like crazy stuff. His son saw us make a drink with his dad's bourbon. The kid's like 14 years old. And it's like, hey, like, you use my dad's bourbon. He wants to send you some. At the time, I had no clue who the fuck this guy was. I Googled him like right before our phone call. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but like, this is amazing that I'm talking to you right now. Long story short, he sent us a bunch of stuff. We liked this bourbon. And I approached him and said, hey, have you ever done this sort of thing where you worked with influencers and made like limited edition lines? And he goes on to tell me how he's worked with athletes and big time names. And I'm
Jeff
like,
Epstein.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly.
We don't talk about
No.
that.
But dude, he had like the chance to work with Pink Whitney, like Barstow took it.
Who?
Pink Whitney was the New Amsterdam pink vodka. What's it called? Is it called Pink Whitney?
I have no idea what that is.
It's like a Barstool New Amsterdam version.
I've probably seen it. I have no idea what it is.
Anyway, yeah, so he had a chance to do that, and they didn't because like didn't really fit their brand. Anyway, so he's like,
he finds a couple paisans in North Jersey making a few videos with Frank Sinatra. Like, I like these guys.
So it was very, in the beginning, like, all right, let's just do it. Let's see how it goes. I happened to be able to find a retailer that I work with, a website that sells. So they essentially bought it from Savage & Cook, and I sell it. And so in a barrel, there's about 240 bottles of bourbon that's made.
Oh, so he produces the bourbon for you and you brand it, and it's under his purview.
Exactly. So what we did was, this was cool. He sent us a bunch of samples what he does with his bourbon is he finishes them in wine barrels. So he sent us a bunch of samples of different wine finished bourbon, and we told his master distiller which ones we liked, which ones we didn't, and we came up with our own blend, so to speak. So now this is our limited edition blend of bourbon called Johnny Drinks.
You're not getting anything like that.
No.
Under his brand. Like, it's going to taste,
Exactly.
You're going to notice that the taste is different.
Oh, it's different. Yeah, for sure.
And your dad's a huge bourbon guy, obviously.
Big time bourbon guy.
So you're also a big bourbon guy.
Nope.
So can you tell?
I fucking hate bourbon. That's where
It's kind of a problem.
That's a problem, but it's also a great thing to have in our corner because I love this bourbon. I wouldn't be able to sip on a bourbon if you paid me. Like, I would never order a straight up bourbon at a bar.
But they do pay you on this one, so I don't fucking believe you.
This one, but honestly speaking, man, I could honestly say I sipped on this bourbon and was like, that was smooth. Like, that went down really well. I can enjoy this. I don't have to pretend to like this. I really do. So even if you're not a bourbon drinker, you're going to like our bourbon. And he obviously loves it. So long story short, we sold our barrel out in like 3 days or so, and now we're scrambling to make a lot more, and we have a run coming out in a couple of days. So
yeah, I don't know if you can reveal this information, but is this like, you don't have to give me a percentage, but is this like, it's like a 50-50 split scenario? Like, you sell and he keeps half because he has the overhead and you're the one creating the market? Or
let me see here. So
you can tell me. Come on.
So I guess you can see
It's
it as
just you
like,
and me.
Yeah, of course. You can see it as like both sides, right? So since I'm working with the retailer and the distillery, I am helping both, right? So I'm getting paid on both ends. I'm getting paid from the original sale, and then I'm getting paid from the end sale, right? So we're doing very well. That being said, there's more opportunities in the future to, if we took control of everything, we may or may not be doing a lot better. So for right now, yes, we are getting taken care of super well from both ends. But everyone is winning. Like, everyone is making good money off this stuff because we're able to push it on. Like, nobody would be able to do it alone, in a sense, right?
And what's your bourbon called again?
It's Burning Chair Bourbon, but the Johnny Drinks edition.
So what's the smoke the glass thing?
So
I'll pull that up.
Yeah, so that was our just look up like Johnny Drinks Bourbon. I'm actually curious to see what comes up when you search Johnny Drinks Bourbon. Yeah. Our claim to fame, and I guess the reason
Google
why
finished my search right away. That was a little creepy.
That's funny.
Go ahead.
So our big like claim to fame, and I guess the reason our page blew up was my dad would smoke a smoke board, and he would cover the smoke with a glass, right? So he would then pour the bourbon in this smoky glass. And the reason, you could say it adds flavor or whatever, adds a smokiness flavor to the bourbon. It's really just for the experience. Like, it looks really, really cool, and people are so amazed by it. So that was like our big, smoke the glass was like our slogan, our tagline. And so this is a smokier bourbon that we're selling.
And you've had that on TikTok videos.
We actually have to get back to that because we haven't done it in a while, and I've noticed that people are looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks, if you know nothing about this, because I didn't really know what you were doing when I was first looking at this. I'm like, all right, wow, okay. I just figured your dad's like an artisanal alcohol guy. Like, he just knows what the fuck's up. But when you're actually putting that content out there, the average person, I mean, we don't even know how wine works, let alone bourbon. So it's pretty amazing when you see it. And now that I know that that's actually like a part of the thing, that's the product that you're literally selling out of this. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so
we got it up here. Is that?
So scroll down to that first link.
The first link right there?
Yeah.
Oh, you got the SEO and everything. Look at you.
That's crazy.
You like this bourbon. It goes down smooth because there's a price tag going down with it. I don't fucking believe you for one second.
Man, I don't promote anything that I don't believe in.
So I haven't liked bourbon my whole life, but I like this one.
But listen, this one's pretty fucking good.
I'm being hard on you. It's okay. All right, so here it is. Is this what you're looking for?
That's it. So that's the website we sell through. So CW Spirits, you can purchase liquor and it gets shipped right to your door, which is really cool.
$69.99. $58.73 is going in John Rondi's pocket.
I wish, bro. I'd be a happy man.
Yeah, you'd be doing okay.
I'd be committed to this and quit everything else.
I was gonna say that's a pretty, just bare bones looking at it, that's a pretty tight margin. I mean, that's a good price.
Yeah.
That is not a rip at all.
No, No, it's I mean that's where you start to expand. You can decrease price or change price based upon the market, and that's the exciting part of what we're doing with this next batch.
And is this like your dad? Like, what's your dad's background? Was this just always a hobby for him, or
Always a hobby. He's never been a bartender. Never was in the alcohol industry.
like not even back in the day?
No, bro. I was a mortgage broker. Like that's the funny part.
No,
is,
but like in college or something?
Never. He saw somebody smoke a glass at a bar one time and was like, I'm doing that. He won't even, like, if he cracks a can of beer, he won't drink it out of the can. He pours it into a glass. He's all about the experience of alcohol.
The aroma.
It really, and you feel that through the videos. You know what I mean? And it goes back to like the topic of sort of getting into that flow state. We make you feel like you're in the room with us, and you feel that sort of nostalgic wintertime vibe that you get with the Frank Sinatra video, you know, the music in the background, and or pouring up some bourbon, and you feel good about it. So,
dude, I'm ready to party when I watch your dad make a drink. Let's fucking go, baby.
Yeah, you're
going up to Wayne saying what's up to the boys.
Yeah, man, you gotta come by.
I do, like, because by the way, the bar is sick. Where he makes all this stuff. Thanks, the bar is it's like this nice, wide open, simple but like professional bar, and you're doing the whole thing with the camera like pulling up and down. That's close and slow mo and everything. It's like you're watching it. It is a show. Well, it's so cool.
Well, thank you. What's interesting is like I started to change or attempt to change things up, right? So I got or I tried to use a camera, or I tried to use my phone lens as opposed to just TikTok. What I realized was that actually does worse. And people have commented like, look, I don't want to see that. It feels way more natural and organic when you're just shooting from the hip with your phone and being very interactive with your dad. Like, that's the stuff that does well. And I always thought that I have to expand and do better. And like, look, get back to your roots. It goes back to that. Like, figure out what is working and stick with it.
There's a line between creativity and overthinking it. There's a really fine line there. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the best parts about your page is how natural and relatable it is with your dad too, because you'll just have a video and you're behind the camera on these ones where it's your dad and not you. You're just like, hey dad, I got a thought, and he's like, hey son, what's up? And it's just like, I wonder how many times they had to do that first part, and then the rest of it's just like, all right, make this for me. All right, step one, step two, all right, cool, bet, let's go. It's so, you're almost like, and then you got the Sinatra in the background. It's like a whole vibe, and your page is very unique. So one of the great things about TikTok is people can relate all these different things across culture and take things that you and I would have never thought of or given half a shit about, and suddenly it's like, wow, that's really cool.
That's a good point.
Right? Mm-hmm. Whereas there are a lot of people who blow up who do it also in spaces that are so crowded, and then only a few blow up. You know, I think the most basic one, the lip syncers, right? Sure. You got great lips, great tits, like it's going to happen. Yeah. You know, if they're not perfect, it might not happen. Whatever. Maybe if they are perfect, it still might not happen because there's so many. Yeah. So when you create something where it's like, wait, I haven't seen that before. Even if people aren't into it, they don't give a fuck about bourbon. They don't give a fuck about the aroma of alcohol. Maybe they're 12 years old and they don't even know what it is. It's in their dad's goddamn cabinet. They come by this page, they're like, holy shit, this guy's cool.
Yeah. It's you mentioned culture and authenticity, right? So I love listening or watching other people from different cultures just behave and act. Like I was watching people like that were Asian, and they were just talking about their cuisine, and I was so intrigued about that because I don't know anything about it. So for us, I think we fit the bill of like the North Jersey vibes, and we have the Italian descent, and we don't try to pretend like we're something we're not. Like we're not off the boat Italian, so we're not going to pretend to have the Italian accents.
You don't have the greenhorn thing going
exactly.
on
Yeah, we're not being douchebags about it. We are who we are, and that's what you're getting. And I think that's sort of the reason why we were able to grow, I guess, relatively quickly.
And after the first video, did it do like a total of 16,000 views, or did it keep going?
No, it hit 8 million.
Holy shit, the first one ended up going to 8.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like our first video.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So that was like our first video. I would not have continued to do this, to be really honest, if it didn't do well. Like that first video did well.
The very first did 8.
Yeah, you can check my page. Yeah.
Holy shit. So how many followers you get out of that?
That's what, like, so I had like 50K off the jump, and like I didn't really realize like,
off the 8.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I remember like a week after, maybe I was like 40, and then I was like, oh, that's a lot, and then realized that really wasn't a lot, and I just keep going.
And it's not when you think about it, if you get 8 million views on a video like that, that means it went heavy on the For You page, and it's really, that is grade A content, and we should talk about how this goes down too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But 50,000 followers is a pretty small percentage of that, of the views.
Dude, so that's the thing, right? Like, so there's a lot that goes into the TikTok algorithm, right? So what keeps your video on the For You page? Is it likes? Is it follows? Is it shares? Is it comments? And from Clubhouse, what I'm learning from these bigger name TikTokers is it's driving traffic to your profile and eliciting or forming a follow after that, right? So if my video can get you to follow my page, TikTok sees that and loves that and is going to keep your page on the keep your video on the For You page. So what a lot of creators start to do is like tactics to just drive traffic to the page. And so it may be something that leaves a little bit of like a cliffhanger, like
Part
leaves
two.
you
Part one,
yeah.
part two.
So those are big. And the reason for that is I'm so interested that I have to learn more. I got to go to this guy's page. And okay, wait, maybe that part 2 isn't out yet. So I have to follow him to wait for that part 2.
A lot of these guys give an effective action. Follow and I'll do a part 2. If I get X amount of blank, I'll do a part 2. So then people take that action.
And it's sometimes cheesy, but if you do it the right way, it fucking works. So yeah, I think that's a big part of TikTok. It's also how long can somebody watch your video? If you can get somebody to watch the entire video and then watch it again and then again, I think that was the reason why we started to do so well, was because you're not watching our video one time. You're saying, holy shit, I want to make that drink. Let me save it for later. I'm going to pull it back up later. And oh wait, what was that part? I got to refresh and watch that video again. So those are the things that start to add up and the reason why these videos will stay. Or
wait a second.
Yeah.
There's a second part there.
Yeah.
You're adding massive value.
Yeah.
You're a page that's giving people instructions. They can then, it's not just like they're getting entertainment. They can take that and then do it for themselves. Like, oh shit, this guy's teaching me how to make this drink.
Yeah.
That's the guy I'm going to go to.
Right.
So then they save your video too on their phone and they're pausing and playing you and like, oh yeah. And then visually they're like, okay, I'm going to wait for the next video on this guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's like you said, there's a difference between being creative and overthinking. And I fell into the trap of sometimes overthinking it, and you just get back to your roots, bro. Like do what works and juice the fuck out of it until you can't anymore, and then you start to pivot and identify different things you can start doing.
So you started hitting this on like a daily basis after that first video, or how did you build into it?
Dude, I was posting like once a week maybe in the beginning, and then I gotta be honest, right? So we hit it while it was hot. Quarantine really helped us grow, and you can look at right now, a lot of bartenders on TikTok have millions of followers, and right now their engagement is terrible because they lost the sauce. Like, they were cool when everyone was just sitting at home. If you're still doing the same thing and you're not relevant, nobody wants to watch your videos anymore. TikTok doesn't care how many followers you have. They're not going to show your video to anybody, which is very interesting.
You know what shouldn't get lost here either? And this is a total side note on this. You ever heard the Airbnb story?
Hell yeah.
Okay. I think about that a lot because of your resourcefulness and everything and how you flip this, because I want to keep this going and see how you grew this page and how it grew out. Yep. But I think it's a relatively famous story now, but I still bring it up and people will be like, wait, what's that? When Airbnb was trying to get off the ground back in the late 2000s.
I'm so happy you're telling the story.
Right? Well, do you want to tell it?
It's funny that you're about to tell this story because this is the...
I'll give the context after.
Yeah,
you tell
dude,
the story.
because I use this story as an analogy, right? So Airbnb, during the Democratic election of 2008, I believe, right?
McCain, Obama.
Yeah.
Yep.
They were so resourceful that they had to start selling cereal to make money to fund the app, right? So they started selling these Democratic political cereal boxes, and
Obama O's.
Yeah, Obama O's.
Captain McCain.
There you go, exactly. So they were making these cereal boxes and selling them and making a shit ton of money off it.
Didn't they have like actual cereal in it too?
I think they had actual cereal, and then they would make the boxes themselves.
Because they were going, I think at the time, like they didn't have much of a product. I got to go look this up again to get the exact details, but they didn't have much of a product.
They had like nothing at the time.
And none of the VCs were, like small VCs, they weren't touching them.
So what they were doing was like they realized that, okay, this Democratic election was a great chance to market their app or their platform because the hotels in the area were all booked and nobody had places to stay for the election. So they leveraged that super well. I use the analogy where like Airbnb sold cereal, I sell bourbon, right? So like I'm using these bourbon sales to fund Stunited. And I think it's a pretty cool comparison because I grew up, or I read that book when I was very early, and I was like, these dudes are people that I want to emulate. Like, I love everything about their story. Brian Chesky wasn't the techie, nerdy dude, just had a great idea and was so passionate about it. If he can make that concept work, as in you were letting strangers into your house to stay, anything can work. That was sort of the always what I would tell myself.
Well, you mimicked it, and it's an ongoing story here, but your staying power with this, and your, I guess, adding a feather to your cap is not necessarily stopping. Like theirs was it was a stopgap. It was like, okay, let's keep the lights on so we can keep our idea going, and it was like cute, and it was also timed. It was time for that election. They weren't selling Captain McCain cereal in February 2009. You know, so they used that resourcefulness to keep the lights on and then be able to go to the VCs as the idea was progressing to be able to say, hey, we're still around. This is what we're trying to do. And basically like stay alive long enough to make it.
Crazy.
You have added basically like a separate business here too that doesn't, I mean, from what you've explained to me, it doesn't take up too much of your time. It's definitely effort. Like you can't just be like, I'm going to post something quick. Like you do have to put effort into it. It is hours out of your week, but it's manageable. Yeah,
for sure. And that's the thing too. I never expected this to become what this is, and it's exciting, right? And it's just it goes back to seizing, whatever opportunity comes your way and making something out of it. Where like I could have easily had this TikTok page, grown it, had fun with it, never really made a lot of money because I never thought it could. But my dad and I guess quickly identified where this could go. And now it's starting to take off to the point of like, what's the side hustle versus what's the main business? That's the interesting part right now.
Well, I don't even think you're going to lose sight of that because you have such a, I don't know the word. This is not the word I want to say, but you have that technologist vibe at heart. Like you are all about, at least this is the vibe I get from you when I talk to you. You are all about... Can't believe I'm going to say this. Solving problems in a convenient way to make the world a better place. You know what I mean? What all the fucking venture capitalists say on their profile. Yeah. But it's true. You think about that from a very 30,000 foot in the air view. That's why I like listening to you talk about it. So I don't, from the outside, and you're like, you know what the truth is in your head. I don't think you're losing that at all. I think you've just found a way to tap into your creativity more and make yourself more interesting and more well-rounded with this. And so you also shouldn't lose sight of the fact that similarly to Airbnb, where they did that at a very low moment. I mean, those screenshots of those denial emails, like, yeah, fuck you.
I started saving mine because of that.
Dude, you did it at a time where the thing you were doing was kind of like sideways and inconvenient, like going to these schools to try to sell like to the schools and leaning away from what your app really was. And then it basically got shut down because the world stopped. So you did it at one of the worst possible moments you could have. And even if you fell into it, you then hit it. And so throughout that whole spring semester, which I love how this whole podcast is like tied back into this timeline, almost like a movie a little bit. Like we go on all these side pieces and then we come back to Stunited and how it went. It's kind of cool. I haven't done one like this. Just fell into it. But like you leverage it all throughout the spring and into the summer and build out this nice following that A, you get this other business out of it, and B, you're also buying yourself time to figure out how to pivot with Stunited. And now here you are at a critical mass where you basically put 3,000 active users on this app. Let's call it what it is, in about a semester. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, and I'm like getting chills over here, like just getting super excited because when you're in it, you never really take a step back and realize where you've come and what you've been able to do. And I think it is like, it's cool, man. And if there's one thing I can sort of, I guess, say about myself is I'm relentless, right? Like I'm not going to stop, especially now. And people, investors or people in the space would be like, you're still here? Like, how are you still going? And you're progressing? Like
you don't give a fuck.
I'm like, the analogy I use is like, look, there's plenty of ways to break down that wall. If I bang my head on it enough times, it's going to break. So I'm here for the long run. I'm going to make this thing work regardless of how I get it done. And that's what people are going to see. So I may not be the smartest. I may not have the tech background. I may not have the experience, but I'm going to get this thing done regardless of how it gets done.
You know what, though? You're missing something that you already said. And this is, I think this might even be the most, well, the relentlessness is probably the most important part. But that relentlessness has to have something with it. Has to have, I guess it's like two little silos there. It has to have purpose and adaptation. You have to be willing to figure out, like, being honest with yourself. Like, all right, is this adding value or isn't it?
Yeah.
How am I going to make it add value if it's not? Or how am I going to make it add more value than it is right now? And it also has to be like, is this really going to a space that needs it? Like, that's the purpose. Is it something I like to do?
Yeah.
You had that figured out. But you also, over time here, had those moments where it's like, well, fuck, this isn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So you had to figure out, like, not just be relentless and be like, I'm here, I'm doing the work. You know, like Gary Vee and all that. Like,
exactly.
just do the work, man. And like, that's just going to make it appear. It's more than that. You can't, like, you might have said this on this podcast. I can't tell because we've been talking and working all day, but you can't just put out 1,000 pieces of shit content and be like, oh, I put out 1,000 pieces of shit content. That means that I must have X following because I deserve it, right? No,
right.
It has to be entertaining, or it has to add value, or frankly, both.
Yeah, that's my dad always says this too. Is like, people are very good at pretending to be busy, right? Like, if there's one thing I can say about my dad,
I like your dad.
If there's one thing I can say about him, we argue more than you could ever imagine, but
North Jersey Italian father son arguing, come on,
it gets bad. But there's one thing I will say: that is the hardest worker in any room, and true hard work, not sitting on your computer and pretending to answer emails, or I'll use another analogy of being in the gym and pretending to walk around. Like, he busts his ass and doesn't say a word about it. That dude will sit on his computer for 12 hours a day and get shit done and come upstairs like he did nothing. That, to me, I see that and I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I'll ever be able to work that hard, and all I could do is just try. And it's reflective. It's reflective in the results. Like, you talk to people that, oh, I'm trying to get in shape and I work out every day, but this and this and this, and I have this problem. No, you're just not working hard enough, or you're doing something, you're making excuses.
You're busting your head against a stone wall.
Right. And the results aren't there for a reason. And his results are there for a reason.
How old's your dad?
55.
That's even more evidence too, because he's a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
He lived through that shit.
He went through times where he was 2 phones answering, like, just did not put them down because there was so much volume.
08, 09. I mean, that's the number of guys I met in my career, including like really successful guys who became successful at something else because they couldn't last in that business after that happened, which totally get it, right? Like, it's insane. I mean, that I don't have a percentage for you. I've never looked it up. I don't know if this data exists, but I'd love to do it. We should do this afterwards. The percentage decrease in mortgage brokers post-crisis.
Interesting, man. And it's also like, it's something that not a lot of people understand the value that they provide. Like, why don't I just go to Rocket Mortgage? Like, that's very simple. And it's really not. Like, so proving out that worth is sort of a challenge in itself. And he's been able to do that, I guess, over the years of just grinding, you know? So yeah, I give him that credit. But like you mentioned, I'm in a space where, honestly speaking, hard work isn't enough, right? I can't just say I'm going to work really, really hard all day and never focus on pivoting or acknowledging what's really going on. You got to have a combination of both. So yeah, that's just what I've been able to do. And I hit a point where I told myself there is no looking back. There is no getting a job or second option. I'm going to make this thing work. What that looks like, I don't know, because I'm not God, but I'm going to see this thing through.
Well, you just reminded me of something we were talking about earlier, and we got cut off by a phone call that came in. I totally forgot about it, but I'm glad I just remembered this, because I had never heard this before, but part of the self-awareness of working hard and building a project isn't just like, okay, well, or product, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It isn't just, well, how good is the product or how hard am I working? It's also, how fitting am I in my role? What am I doing, and does this make sense for the long-term viability of this? Am I in a spot where I am going to be most advantageous so that for the people around me too, this thing goes? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like, there are a lot of, I mean, the best example, there are a lot of CEOs out there who have no business being a CEO. They don't, and that's not even like, hey, you're weak or you suck. It's just like, that's not who they are, and they don't have the self-awareness of that, and then they kind of hurt whatever the company or product is in the long term. And you brought up this thing, I've never heard this before. I don't know if you invented this. If you did, you got to trademark this. But you were saying there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and an intrepreneur.
Yeah.
And you're an entrepreneur, and I know that.
Yeah.
But what's an intrepreneur and what does this mean?
Yeah, and so you brought up a great point, right? Like, and I want to preface this by saying people think that being an entrepreneur is a step above, and it's not. It's just it's different, right? Like, just like somebody can be techie or great to work with their hands, other people are good to work with entrepreneurs. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just that is what it is. Other people are good at becoming entrepreneurs, and what I mean by that is not necessarily starting something on your own, but joining a team early on that requires innovation and this sort of business structure. So you provide something very different than the CEO. You couldn't be in his shoes and he couldn't be in your shoes. You're both critical to growing this company. And I think, honestly speaking, more CEOs and entrepreneurs should identify who these entrepreneurs are and surround themselves with them. Like, I have, for example, Anthony Fenu, who is a fantastic, what I think is entrepreneur. I love just bouncing ideas off of him to see his creative juices start to flow and hear what he has to say and see what he comes up with and how he reacts instantly. I say something, he goes, bam, let's go do it. I need to create content, bam, we're doing it right now. There is no pause and, oh yeah, great idea, maybe later or maybe tomorrow. So those are key traits to have as an entrepreneur, things that I necessarily don't have, you know?
And he's also like a wildly curious intellectual.
Huge. And I think that's part of it.
And that, yeah, because, and to give context, he does a lot of media work on guys you know and you as well. And he is a guy who, in my opinion, studies all types of entrepreneurs very, very closely.
Yeah.
And he'll give commentary, whether it be at the highest level, talking about Steve Jobs, down to like some dude I've never heard of that he just connected with and he does this thing and like, here's why he's great at it. And I think that's an awesome example because I don't know if I would see in that example Anthony founding a Silicon Valley tech company.
Yeah.
Not that like tech is like his strong suit or whatever, but let's say it was. Like, I don't know if he's that guy. But is he the guy who understands what the message of the company is and how they're going to build that out internally and how they're going to create that so that as they grow, they don't lose who they are? Yeah.
That's 100%.
And that's what you mean by
right. Right. Not that it's a slight at all. It's just different. And he identifies what my good values are, what my not so good values are. So how I could become a better CEO and a better entrepreneur, or what I do super well. Like, he points these things out, and like you said, will then point to other entrepreneurs and say, hey, you mirror so-and-so, and you could mirror so-and-so. And without him there, I would have never known that, you know?
Yeah, and there's historical precedence at the highest level for this over time. Jobs, Wozniak.
Yeah.
I mean, even at Google, you had Larry Page and Sergey Brin, but they brought in Eric Schmidt to run the company, right? Like, they recognized they weren't necessarily the day-to-day CEO. Mm-hmm. Who else here? I'm blanking out. There's a ton.
You can give the example of
Krieger and Systrom at Instagram.
Yeah. I think you give the example of, like, even we talk about Soar a lot, right? That dynamic, they're all very, very different, and I think none of them would be able to do it alone. You know, like, they all just complete the puzzle super well, and it's interesting, right?
And Soar, for context, is Anthony Fenu and Riley's and I don't know Baker's last name, actually.
No, Baker's his last name.
I just met Baker.
That's his last name.
Wait, that's his last name.
It's Justin Baker.
Oh, that's a plot twist.
Yeah. Have you met him?
Yeah.
Oh, he's so
I literally
funny,
just met him. He's hilarious.
He's the best, man.
But that's their company. Just want to give the context.
Yeah, and so again, I think without knowing who they are or having to know who they are, they all bring something different.
Yes.
And I think Fenu is just a true entrepreneur at heart. Like, that dude is just, it's just different. You know what I mean? You can sense it when he talks. Riley has the same thing. He has these you know, he reflects just being curious and being able to take control of a situation. And I think, honestly, being an entrepreneur, the biggest trait you can have is just pulling taking action, right? Like, just going, not having this constant decision-making process. Sometimes you just got to go.
Riley's got that it thing.
Yeah.
He's got that it thing. Like, it's just that thing. Like, when he walks in the room, when I first met him,
he's got it.
He is not in any way arrogant. He is just completely understanding of what his world is and has the same level of curiosity, at least from what I've seen, as his co-founders do.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities between me and him. Like we're both similar in that sense.
I agree with that.
Because I don't think, I mean, I'm not overly, like I said, I'm not overly intelligent in terms of like knowing technology or VC space, but him and I are just very curious and know how to get things done and know how to present ourselves and the idea. And he couples that with having people around him that are just fantastic.
He never saw a paragraph that he can't make a sentence.
Yeah.
He's very, very, like, literally spending 3 hours with him one time. Like that's really the longest extent I spent around him. And you listen to somebody talk and how they present their business when you're asking questions. And when you ask a question, he'll ask a clarification question right up front to know what he's dealing with.
I've never he did that, and I've heard him do it a couple times, and I thought it was so interesting because I've never. It's very transparent and it's almost shocking, but at the same time, more people should do it.
Yeah.
Like, why shouldn't we be able to understand who we're talking to for some context, right? Let's get this conversation going and in the right direction.
Especially if you're dealing with complex shit.
Exactly.
You don't know who the fuck is going to, like, you know, with them, you say compression to somebody, they're looking, you go,
cool.
Sorry, come again?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you want to know if you're talking to someone who actually is very into this world or has no fucking clue about it. Like, how do you explain it? And that's a very... I mean, that can sink companies when you don't know how to do it.
So that's why I think Fenu having Riley is fantastic because he dumbs things down for people like me, whereas Fenu will lose me in 5 minutes. He'll talk and I'd be like, dude, I'm sorry, but what the fuck did you just say? You know what I mean? Like, please dumb this down so I can understand.
He's like a very... I can't put my finger on the word for it. I like listening to him talk because...
Me too, man.
He's also got that thing. It's totally different. It's a yin and a yang to Riley. Like their worldviews they seem to be very similar, and that's why they vibe well. But their styles
so different.
Oh my god!
And it's not like for example, like I said, me and my co-founder are very different, yin and yang. But he's and he'll admit he's just the nerdier person, and he fits that bill very very well. Super smart. Fenu doesn't give off that like nerdyish vibe, but he's still extremely smart, and it's just it's hard to pinpoint what that it really is.
Everyone tries to put people in a box to compare them to someone else. Like when you're seeing someone come up lighting the world on fire and be like, that guy's like this guy.
Yeah.
Like we do it in sports all the time, and I think it's applicable to everything when I say this. I really stopped doing that with sports a lot because guys are different over time. Yeah. This guy's not like that guy. Like it's exactly. It's there's nuance to it. But then when you look in the tech world, I feel like you can do that more than you can with sports. Not that you should, because I think we really got to get away from that. But with him, there's nobody I can compare him to.
Yeah.
Just like when I look at Silicon Valley and the history of it and who was there, I'm like, no, he's like way different than that guy, or like he's way way different. He's just him. He's Anthony Fenu.
He's one of those people, and this is again like my co-founder too. When they talk, it doesn't matter what they're talking about. What they say, you take as truth, sort of regardless. Like Fenu will have a point about something, and my immediate thought is just agree. Like, all right, that made a lot of sense. Whatever you said, I may not have agreed with it if somebody else said it, but because you said it, I'm like, yeah, sure.
Which isn't always healthy on your end.
No, it's not. And that's where, like, with David, like I said, my co-founder, I fell into that trap sometimes too often where I just because I was like, look, that sounded great. You know, you're probably right. So, like, fuck it. Let's just keep going with it. So I had to force myself, because he's so smart, to, bite back a little bit sometimes and say, well, maybe that's not right. Maybe we could argue about this for a little bit.
Smart people with the right intentions want to be challenged.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it doesn't always manifest itself that way. They'll challenge you right back. Like, who the fuck are you? Yeah. But they want you to do it.
They do,
because you get so stuck in, especially when it's complex shit and that you know a lot about and the rest of the world doesn't. You get so stuck in it that like you constantly wonder and come up for air. If you're smart, am I in tunnel vision? Is this really what's happening, or am I just so lost in this that like I lost the plot here?
Yeah, and that's where I'll go back to, as an entrepreneur, solo founder, or having a co-founder, doesn't matter. Surround yourself with other startups. Like Fenu and Riley and Baker at Soar have been able to help me And I like to say that I've been able to help them just from having a different perspective. Like they were so tunnel visioned in on what they were building that you sort of miss something sometimes. And it's almost like for me, like, well, wait, why aren't you thinking about this thing that's so very obvious? And then when you bring it up to them, they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? And the same thing applies with me, right? So find people that aren't necessarily in the same boat as you, but can give you a different perspective or like a fresh perspective.
This is another interesting thing I want to ask you about, because there's another slippery slope to some of this. A common quote that people say all the time, now I say it too, it's just very common to say, is, I'm looking to come to a place where I see like-minded people who are motivated in the same way and all these things.
Yeah.
And a danger that you fall into that, and it's in the social media era where you can go find these people, is that you get stuck in these echo chambers. Like when you say like-minded, and this is something you hear, think of any app, any social platform, you see this, you read it, you hear it everywhere. When you think of like-minded, you are trying to find people, even if you don't know it, who are circle jerking you. And it's like, who can out-agree with the last person? And there is such an important trait, especially to me, in the founder of tech companies, because tech is what rewrites how the world operates. There is such an important trait of being a contrarian. And I think a danger that we've run into in Silicon Valley, and people like to bring it right to politics, and sure, that's a part of any conversation, but it drags on to so many other things. A danger we have is that a place that was built on the backs of people like Steve Jobs, who literally said, think different, has a way of thinking that they think different to go create things, but then once they do, or while they're doing it, everything else, there's a certain way of doing it and a certain way of thinking, and that's it. And if you don't, get the fuck out.
Right.
That's dangerous.
For sure.
And I think having guys like that in your corner, they are not guys who are just going to agree with you, with what you say. Even if like you're tempted to agree with them, and when you're talking to really smart guys, of course it's a temptation and everything. But they're people who they kind of say it like it is, and doesn't mean they're right, but they're not going to shy away from that doesn't make sense.
I think it's almost like a byproduct of being in the space that we're in, right? So I'm extremely transparent too, because I've been knocked so many times. It's when you're a startup, you're expecting denial, right? Somebody's going to bash what you're doing because it's not ordinary, it's not traditional. So I am transparent with everybody. Like if you're going to ask me a question, I don't necessarily care how you're going to react to my answer. And that's just, if it's a fault, it's a fault, but that's just who I am. And I think more people should be like that. Like I talked to a fund the other day, and it was literally within 10 minutes, this lady said, hey, look, we're not interested in what you're doing because I think these are your flaws, but I wish you the best, and here is some follow-up points. We had a great conversation, but I was like, thank you for being so transparent, because first of all, I need to see that from that perspective, and it moves the conversation so well. Like I don't need to hear, hey, great idea, let's get back to you in a couple days, and then you shoot me an email being dishonest saying, hey, not right timing, or maybe next month. But
and she did this 10 minutes in, you said?
Literally, she asked the question, and
respect.
I answered it to my bet. Like I answered this thing very, very well. And she's like, oh, fair enough. Great point. I don't see, we're not in that space, and it's hard for me I won't be able to provide a lot of value to you. So it's going to be a no for us, but thank you.
She didn't waste your time, and then she gave you value by still being able to speak on it and say like, okay, It doesn't mean I'm right, but like, here's some things to think about.
It's you got to realize that what you're doing, just because somebody bashes it, doesn't mean they're right. Like they just don't think the same way you think. And a lot of things are subjective, right? If you're not a coffee drinker and I'm trying to sell you coffee and you say, nah, man, I don't like coffee, why should I be offended? You just don't like fucking coffee. Let me go try to find somebody else that does. And that's just like, it goes back to selling anything. So you have to realize that and don't get so offended when people don't like what you're doing.
And there's a big difference between busting balls to be funny on stuff that makes us different and actually being totally gung-ho on like, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. You need to do this because I do.
And sometimes like you need people to say, look, what you're doing doesn't make sense for XYZ reason. Have you thought about this? Because if you haven't thought about that, that's a problem, right? And maybe then you start to think about it and realize A, that you are wrong, or B, you have an answer to that. And
no, you're open to it, which is great.
Oh yeah.
But does it still bother you sometimes because you're building? It's not like, and I'm not saying it wouldn't bother you if you were already a billionaire and doing your whole thing, but there's pressure, right? So do you have that natural inclination when you hear it, like, oh fuck no, here's why they might be wrong?
So I would say in the beginning, I definitely felt that. Like I was afraid to get questions that I didn't know the answers to, and I would already prep which questions those would be. I'm in a place right now where conviction is really high, right? You're not going to ask me something or bring something up that's going to shut me down completely. That being said, there are things that I have to think about. And like, shit, maybe I am delusional in my thought process, but here I am and I'm going to keep going. So, it does it does sting a little bit when you have the same concerns happening over and over and over again. But at the same time, you learn how to craft your response and you learn what works. Oh, wow, that's a really good point. Or, hey, yeah, still doesn't make sense. So you need that, especially in the early stages.
Is this, like, being an entrepreneur is something, it's a buzzword people toss around.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking everyone's an entrepreneur.
So annoying.
If you look
It's
at their
so
Instagram.
fucking annoying, bro.
It is so... someone could be working, and no disrespect, they're working a 9-to-5 job all week, and they spend an hour a night doing something that's not going to go anywhere, and they're a fucking entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it's like anything else. When something gets popular, it gets overdelted in culture. I get it, but you've been this. You've been doing it. Like this is you. It's been that way since sophomore year, junior year of college.
Pretty much, yeah. Junior.
So is this like when you were growing up? Were you thinking of yourself like just trying to make a lot of money, going into a big company or doing your thing? Or were you open to stuff? Or were you thinking, no, I'm going to go build something myself?
So this is going to sound super like interesting. I always saw myself different, right? I always knew it was almost like an inevitability. Like something was going to be different about my life than everyone else's. I didn't know what that looked like. I damn well didn't think it was going to be fucking Edtech. But something was different, right? And
is that a term, Edtech?
Yeah, education technology.
I love that.
I didn't know that either until like fucking somebody said it to me. I was like, what does that mean?
That's great.
And they're like, that's the space you're in, dumbass. I'm like, oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, sweet. Edtech. So yeah, I always wanted to do something different and have a true impact on the world and all these good things. But it's crazy because I'm a big believer in sort of like fate and believing in what the future holds type of thing. For whatever reason, the number 25 always stood out to me. Like, I'm going to make something happen, and it's going to be at 25. And this is honestly what I've said to myself since 18 and 19 and 2021, where at the time, I felt the feeling of, okay, I'm going to be successful, but it always felt like it was here and not here, if that makes sense. Whereas right now, at 25 years old, it's here. Things are happening, right? Things are taking off. This is my year. And you say that to yourself every single year. It feels different now. And so I've always had this vision, and again, I didn't know where it was going to go, but yeah, I just always kept it inside of me that I'm going to have an impact on this world.
What if it's not? What if it's not? What if it's not now? Does that... Because sometimes we get ourselves so hyped up for an expectation. And it could be anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be some long-term vision of like your business or when it's going to go. And people plot out when something's going to happen. And when you look at society... This is what they sell you too.
Yeah.
And this really doesn't apply to you, but they sell you that go to college, get the major, get out, take this job, rise up to this point, marry at this age, yada, 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 all the way to retirement, go to a beach somewhere, look up at the sun and fucking die.
Yeah.
Like that's what they tell you, and get the 401k along the way. Mm-hmm. Plans don't work linearly like that. It's been a long day, man.
It has, man.
Do you set yourself up for that expectation of like, hey, I know I have like maybe these weird visions or like these thoughts that like, oh yeah, fate's gonna do it at that point. But if it doesn't, I'm gonna fucking keep going. Don't worry about it. Like that's just how it is.
Yeah. Obviously, you got to be a big dreamer to be in my shoes as like an entrepreneur. You have to be. Like you have to have over expectations. But I never set like objective goals, and that may be a bad thing or a good thing, but I'll never say, hey, by 25 I'll make this much money, or hey, because honestly I think that's limiting, right? If I say I'm gonna make $1 million, well, maybe I was set up to make $2 million, but now I'm not even shooting for that. So it's all perception too, right? Like what does success feel like to you, and what does that really look like? It could be helping out, whatever, it's being philanthropic, right? Or helping out a society, or your small little town. So you have to feel that in yourself. And you also have to feel like you're just on the journey, right? Maybe I don't achieve my goal at 25, but I'm making huge strides. And at the end of the day, that's all how I feel about myself. Nobody else is going to be able to tell me you did what you wanted to do.
You also got to be honest about that too.
For sure.
So when you're evaluating yourself, you don't fall into the trap of accidentally making excuses in place of a place where you're telling yourself like, oh, well, no, it just didn't happen because of this.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really know how to say that, but you know what I mean.
The honesty thing is a big one, and I'm overly honest, right? Like, I'm not shit yet, and I'm not even close to where I want to be. But part of me also, you gotta sit back and smell the flowers sometimes. Like, realize you've been able to do some cool things. And I don't ever give myself any acknowledgement because I don't ever want to pretend like I'm somewhere that I'm not, you know? So that's a tough one to deal with yourself. And I'm sure people all across the world experience that. And it's healthy because it's competitive and you want to keep striving for more.
Yeah. And it's also, you know, you have to keep your mental, especially as an entrepreneur. You know, you're on the island, even with your business. If you have business partners, you guys are on the island, and you're trying to, even when you make it, you're still trying to do the next thing. And,
right, like what is making it? That's
right,
the thing.
Exactly. And everyone's got a different definition of that.
Yeah.
But you want to know that you give yourself credit so that you're not constantly living in a state of I suck. Like that's not healthy.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to rest on wins because wins become losses real quick when you sit there and enjoy them too much.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and yeah, it's stepping blocks, right? Like, okay, you won one goal, it's great. Move on to the next one and just keep moving forward. But what I used to say to myself in the very beginning of entrepreneurship and starting something, the highs are super high. The lows are 10 times lower, where they'll crush you and you'll feel depressed about something that's not even fucking real. You're trying to start something. It doesn't exist yet, and it's causing you to feel so upset about yourself. It just doesn't make sense, right? But what ends up happening on this road or this journey, for me at least, the highs still feel very high. The lows don't feel as low anymore. Like, you're not going to make me feel low anymore. Like, you're going to tell me my app sucks, the idea is not going to make it. Doesn't really bother me. Something can go wrong with the technology. I sort of take it on the chin. But thankfully, the highs still feel so sweet. And it doesn't even have to be that high of a high. And I don't know if that's for everybody. Like, that's just how I've experienced it, which is a great feeling, you know?
Well, do you worry about when you're not feeling those lows, that part of it is just ignoring criticism where you want to hear it? Because we talked about that earlier, but I'm tying it back in because, you know, that's a slippery slope you can fall into.
It is. And I think, honestly, I see it more as an opportunity now, right? Like, I want to grow this thing so fucking badly that I'm almost happy when somebody tells me, hey, this is going wrong. Okay,
so you take note of it.
I'm like, oh, that's the reason why we're not growing faster. Okay, let's fix that. Now let's see what happens. Okay, great. Now we're scaling faster. Hey, somebody doesn't believe in what we're doing. Okay, great. Tell me why. So it's almost like your approach to these things as opposed to them not existing.
On this show, I talk with a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I mean, coming in, that was the goal. If it were up to me, I'd be talking to opposite day every day, right? Yeah. You're just like, wait, you did what? Yeah. It's just a cool thing because when people ask me what this is, I explain it's a long form podcast where I have conversations with people from all walks of life across culture. And they're like, huh. So then I'll give them visuals and I'll say, you know, one episode I had a guy who lived in Africa with the Peace Corps for 2 years. The next episode I had a technologist who runs a back end for Fortune 500 companies. So I try to keep it across the board. But I do love talking with actual entrepreneurs and talking with people who are building shit because I get it. And it's not like I get it. I've never built an app in that way. I've never been a technologist like you are and stuff like that. But I am on an island. What you see here, I got to do. If I don't do it, no one fucking does it. And in a way, in my career, when I was first coming into it, working on Wall Street in the space I worked in there, they tell you you're an entrepreneur. You're not. You're not. If you are paid by somebody and you are paid by somebody who can fire you just for whatever reason, you're not an entrepreneur. You have a backstop. And it's no disrespect to those people. And there's a lot of guys who work their balls off and get to the top of the game there. It's no disrespect. when you are out on your own with whatever it is, could be something stupid like a podcast, or it could be like trying to change the world with some disruptive technology. It's up to you. Or if it's your team, it's up to you and your team. No one's going to help you without you asking for it and then providing value in return or giving them a reason to believe in you. And you're going to have lean times. In fact, while you're building, I think Elon said this the other night. It was a beautiful quote. Giovanni retweeted it, but it was like, or he tweeted out. It was something like, if you're starting a startup and you need positive reinforcement, you should not be starting a startup. And then he said, and I'm roughly quoting here, starting a startup is like chewing glass shards and staring into the abyss. It's going to be long and it's going to suck. And it's true, because even the people close to you, they have their lives, man. They got to worry about that, whether they're an entrepreneur or just some guy working or doing whatever. They have their lives. They got to worry about their shit. And so your problems, like if you're in it and you've been working 24/7 all week and you're tired as fuck and like you're taking all these beats and whatever, it's not that they don't fucking care, though some of them don't. Mm-hmm. They don't have time to worry about it.
Right.
You're alone. You're the one that's got to deal with that. It's not like you have a shrink on staff like a hedge fund that made it, right?
Yeah.
You are your shrink. You are your motivational speaker. You are your person that also has to strategize the business and adapt over time. And the reason I bring this up is because in my previous career, I did get to spend a lot of that. That's where I got a lot of exposure to true entrepreneurs and guys like you out there building it. And I always insisted on never assuming I understood things. If you don't do it, I always assumed I didn't. And over time, I'd be close with a lot of these guys, and they would tell me how it was. And so there was a level to which when they would say, look, no disrespect, but people who don't do this don't fucking get it. And there was a level to which at some point I started to say in my head, and I was okay with this, I get it. Like, I understand where they're coming from with that. Maybe, like, I don't get that, like they say, but I understand where they're coming from. And then I went to do it myself. And now I get it. Because now I know what it's like, where that little thing that no one else notices, but you spend all that time on, doesn't fucking matter, right? The market's going to do what the market's going to do. You are either great or you suck, and get the fuck out. And while you're on that journey, the people around you, they may not even be able to give you the right feedback because they're not the people that understand what the market is or understand what needs to happen here or even understand what the fuck you're doing. Yeah. And that's a hard thing because some of those same people do want what's best for you. Like in their hearts, they do, right? And it could be family, it could be friends. People, entrepreneurs experience it across the spectrum. Every single one of them does. But they have to know who to drown out and who to listen to. And not even just on a human-to-human basis. What ideas from which humans to be honest with themselves that they're giving you that are right, and what ideas actually, like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about there, and that's not just my ego talking.
Right.
So for you, what you have on me is you got this bug way sooner in your life than I did. I understood nothing about this. I wasn't like you in college. In college, I was like, all right, what's the next thing? What's the next class? Let me throw on my hoodie. All right. Oh, I got to go get a job now? Cool. I'll go there. That's where I'm supposed to get a job, right? Yeah. You were out here thinking like, damn. I really I hate writing. Oh my God. And I'm making fun of you. But really, though, you were sitting there going, I have a problem. Oh my God, I can fix this problem.
Yeah.
And not only can I fix it for myself, I can fix it for a lot of other people. So then you had to jump in and build it. And so you've been on that island for way longer than I have. And this is my question for you. How much or how often do you have to reset yourself and just say like, hey, have the grace to know people don't get it. It's not their fault. Take the criticism that you know is the honest criticism that is reliable. Take that and move it into your business, but also know what to drown out.
So that's an interesting one, right? Like I feel like now, and this is very different than how it was 3 years ago or whatever, the only criticism that I get now is from people that should be giving me criticism, right? That is people that are, that I'm fundraising from, or people that are in the space, like constructive criticism. The criticism that you used to get is from the traditional people that don't get it. And, like hey, this is a great experience, but maybe you should go try to get a job. Or, hey, why are you doing what you're doing? And nowadays, I think I've sort of shut that out so much that nobody feels the need to say that to me anymore. Like nobody feels the need to try to bring me down, because number one, you're not going to, it's not going to work. And if it is coming from a good place, like from my parents and family and friends and people trying to say, hey, like protect me, they know I'm good. Like they know I got it. Like this kid's going to be okay. Whatever he's doing, whatever John touches is going to work out. And that could be an ego thing or it could be not, but I don't listen to any sort of negative feedback that doesn't make sense. Like if you're going to tell me, hey, you should go get a job. Well, why? Well, because what you're doing isn't working yet. Well, how long have I been doing it for? Well, you should probably be making this sort of money and have a secure job. And like, if that's your reasoning, thank you, but no thank you. So I drown it out very, very quickly. And the people that are close enough to me sort of have seen it and say, okay, look, I'm going to support him and he's not stopping, so I'm wasting my breath by trying to convince him to.
How long did it take you to get there?
It took a while, man. I mean, like it took a while where it took a while from the point of, hey, this is a fun experience and great job, John. You're super great at what you're doing and have a lot of fun, and to transitioning into, wow, this is a legitimized business and this is going to be something. I would say like this year, like really this year was like our turning point when people were actually on the app. And I wanted to bring this up to you. It's the feeling of, hey, this is going to happen versus, hey, this is happening are two different things. And I I called my co-founder up one day and I was like, dude, holy shit, like it's working. Like people are on the app and they're using it in the way that we expect them to. Like what the fuck's going on? It's almost like a shock. Like you expected it to happen, but it's here. And he looks at you and you're like, yeah, it's real. Like this is going on. And it's almost like a dream every time you look back and say we achieved another milestone, or it's progressing even more now. And so once it starts to feel real for the outside world, because that's two different things, right? We mentioned about Soar. Things are always happening in the background and nobody else sees that. And that's when the criticism comes and, hey, Johnny, you've been doing this for a while and nothing's really coming of it yet and you haven't really progressed. And that's okay. And I understand that they don't see that. But once they start to really see it, they're either going to say, or they're going to stop saying it, or their criticism doesn't make sense anymore.
Wow. So it did take you that long to get there, though. And I love that answer. I wanted you to give that whole thing, but it's not like, you were 6 months in or a year in and you're like, oh, I know the difference now. Like I can drown out that. I'll keep that. Like, all right, I'm good. You had to go through all these waves of your business, good and bad, for multiple cycles, let's call it, right? Over a period of 4 or 5 years before you had the wisdom to be like, okay, I can judge this correctly now.
Yeah, I think it's the conviction, right? Like, because you don't have conviction overnight, and nobody does. And they're lying if they say they do, right? If I have a great idea and you bash it in the first coming months, that sucks. And you start to you convinced me now to reconsider what I was doing. There's no convincing me to reconsider what I'm doing now. I don't care who you are, what you tell me. It's not going to stop me, right? Because I have that conviction. Whereas, like I said a year ago, I really didn't. So it was easier for people to say that to me and actually have an impact on me.
And you've also proven that you do what it takes, though, publicly.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I talk about the resourcefulness. I've known you for a month. I think about the people that have known you for years, and they're looking at this like, damn, this fucking guy. Like, I don't know what he's doing.
He's coming back. Yeah, exactly.
You know what? He knows what he's doing. And that's the biggest thing. Like, you don't even need people to get it, but you need people to get you and be like, oh, like I couldn't do that. Or like, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's exactly. I wouldn't do that. And that's where like, I don't put myself above anybody that has a 9-to-5 or whatever it is, because number one, I'm not in this position where I want to be just yet, right? Even if I was making billions of dollars and had this well-established company, I still wouldn't, because it's just different. Like you wouldn't do what I would do, and I wouldn't do what you're doing. Like I think a lot of people work a lot harder than I do. Like people that work with their hands every day, got to wake up at 6 a.m, contractors and landscapers and irrigation, like that's hard fucking work, man. I would never want to do that. And I wouldn't be able to do that, and likewise, they wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing.
Everyone's different in how they're wired.
For sure.
So what one person enjoys, another person thinks is shit.
Yeah.
And it can work in every which direction. But I guess you hear these phrases like a business lives inside of everyone or whatever. And I don't think so, man. No. Like and that's no disrespect to people, but people in this life want different things. And it doesn't all come back to how much money am I putting in my bank account, or how is it getting in there, through what means. It comes back to like what makes someone feel happy to be right here, and everyone's going for that. Even the most psycho entrepreneurs of all time, the Elon Musk of the world, they don't even know it, right? And Elon Musk lives his life in this total crisis all the time because he's trying to fucking save the world 6 times over, right? Yeah. So he's probably never going to get here, but he's still in his life. That's how he feels like, that's what he feels like he has to do, and all the things that come with it, his whole public persona and how he presents his companies and what projects they're working on specifically. All those things are this way to get to this equilibrium where he's like, okay, I know I did my thing. Yeah. I've done it. Whether that's when he's an old man taking his last breath, which for him it probably will be. He'll probably die at the goddamn desk.
Definitely.
Or, at the hologram, whatever.
Yeah.
Shout out Soar. Yeah. But, there is this, he may be way different than you or me or our parents or our friends, but he's still the end result, like it's the same wavelength.
Yeah, no, and you brought up a good point about like the hard work thing. Like it's subjective in a sense, right? Like me working landscape would be extremely hard work. I would never want to do it ever, but there are people that probably enjoy that, right? Because they do it and they make a lot of money doing it. I think the goal in life is to find something that you can work super hard at and enjoy it. Like, where's your best effort put? Is it in something with your hands, or is it something with your mind? And honestly speaking, I am always thinking there should be an easier way. Like this has to be easier. There has to be an easier way than me just doing this out of brunt or brute force, and it shows and reflects in like what you're doing. Like for example, when I was a caddy at 15, 16 years old, I fucking hated it. I hated caddy. I hated everything about golf. I hated being on that course. And it reflected. I was a shitty caddy, right? I was lazy. I was behind. I didn't care about what was going on.
Oh, were you one of those like staring off to the right while they're teeing off?
Dude, I would be in the woods taking a piss, and the balls would be flying around. I would say like when I was, and then look, my thought process changed a bit when I was training for football or whatever it was. I treated it like a workout, so I didn't care if I was a good caddy or not. That ball was over there, bam, I'm fucking sprinting to it because I just wanted to run. Like I was just. So you start to realize where to put your efforts, and I'll work hard in this sort of thing, right? I would pitch for 10 hours a day. I'll talk to students. I'll reinvent the app. Like I love this stuff. Like this is what brings me, like happiness, and I think that's at the end of the day, that's the point of life. Find what makes you happy.
Well, it's empathy too, in seeing that and recognizing that and seeing that other people have different things that get them up in the morning.
Yeah, and it makes you feel good. Like it doesn't make you feel like I sometimes feel bad about myself when I see people working so hard because I think they're miserable, but they could very well be happy about what they're doing.
Yeah, appearances aren't always what they look like.
Yeah, like when I'm waking up at 8 or whatever it is and I go outside because I'm going to my car to go to the gym and I see people mowing lawns, I'm like, damn, like I'm a lazy piece of shit and this dude is busting his ass working hard. But he could look at me on a computer and be like, wow, I would never want to do that.
I wish we could look at things this way as a society because most people don't. And big part of that's the internet and just constant putting thoughts and quick hitters out there. But empathy is, I think, what's lacking in how we see what makes us all similar versus what makes us different and attacking each other for it. Yeah. So it's not just like, oh, well, what makes this guy excited, I get that. And like, this makes me excited. It goes down to like our politics and why someone from this part of the country may think something different than this part of the country. And how now with the internet where those people can fucking talk to each other and try to body bag each other online, it creates more and more tension. And we don't, too many of us, some of us do, but too many of us don't step outside of that and say, well, maybe this is why they think that. Or you know what? They're going to think what they think. If they vote, they're going to vote how they vote. If I vote, I'm going to vote how I vote. And, may the best man win. Yeah. That kind of thing. And I just wish that there was a way we could put the genie back in the bottle here where, go pre the resource of the internet, that the great thing that it is, not that we didn't have the vision before that, we did, but go to a time where it wasn't such life and death over everything. Because I'm not saying it is, but that's how people treat it, and that's how they talk about it. And so I don't mean to bring this straight to politics, which it comes up in everything. I mean just like in general. I mean, people will fight over who their favorite basketball player is, like, it's World War III. It is not a healthy thing in society.
I completely agree. I think the empathy word resonates super well with me. It's very hard for myself, and I think a lot of people, to put themselves in other people's shoes. And when you're building something or trying to build something, that is a huge skill to have, right? So for me, I want to put myself in the shoes of my users, or in terms of my content, my viewers. And if I can't do that, that's where you run into a problem with longevity. If you just can't sustain or really understand what people want to see or have in their hands, you're going to run into a problem. And so learning that skill is super important. And that comes with, I guess, surrounding yourself with different-minded people and taking that criticism. I want to take somebody completely out of my space and say, hey, how do you feel about what I'm doing? Do you like this content? Do you like this app? And if they say, hey, yeah, that's great, or no, for this reason, that's a fresh perspective that I never thought about.
Well, that's smart, because not when you're seeking the contrarian opinion, or the outside opinion, I guess you would say, you're not just going to somebody who just thinks differently than you, potentially. You're also going to somebody who could very well be the end user. And it's useful because they're not stuck in the tunnel vision and minutia of your world that you just naturally get stuck in, because you're worried about every little detail. You know your craft inside and out, and other people obviously don't know it like you do. So they can give that honest, high-level answer. And you had mentioned this earlier, but my mind goes straight to the UI and UX of things. So when you're asking for opinions, let's just say on Stunited in this case, you're going to people and not just saying okay, what kind of value can you get out of this app? You're asking questions like, well, how easy is this to use? What do you like about it? What do you like about the colors? What do you like about the main page? How about the menu? Does it have the options you want? And when you're talking to somebody who, let's just use an example, someone entirely different. Let's just say someone who works on Wall Street. They're an investment banker. They don't fucking do this shit. They expect to take out their phone. They already don't have enough hours in the day. If they're using something and they wouldn't be using your app.
No, I get it.
I'm just using the example here. Let's say they were in college too. Just go crazy. When they take it out, they just quickly want to be able to go boom, boom, boom. Okay, got it. Got what they need, done. So if they can't do that, they're going to tell you why they can't. And it's not like they know every little move you made. They just know, is it yes or no? Did it do what I wanted it to do?
Yeah. And it goes back to it doesn't really matter what your input is, it matters what the output is, right? So if I could, you don't care. It's very agnostic, right? As the end user, you don't give a shit what I look like, what color what color my skin is, how long it took me to create this product. What you care about is the end product. And so talking and having those conversations is crucial, because you can get lost, like you said, in the minutia of, I worked so hard this week, why didn't anything move forward? And it could have been right in front of your face. You just didn't look for it.
And you also have to be willing to have those moments where you're like, oh shit, everything I did the last 2 days doesn't work.
And you have to brush it off. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter. I busted my ass for 2 years and it didn't matter. What mattered was the last 6 months that really things started moving forward.
And it's not a waste of time either.
Right. Exactly.
You learn.
You learned a lot, and you realize how you should be going about things.
Yeah, it's very easy to get caught up and be like, oh, I should have done this, or like, oh my God, if I had done that, I'd be here doing this. But everyone's got the hindsight 2020. There's very often you have to fuck up to figure things out. And people throw around the buzz phrase like, oh, failure is good because it teaches you to do whatever. And they'll use that as a crutch and then just fail at fucking everything. It is still, when it doesn't get overused, it is a very important phrase though.
Yeah, for sure. I always say, and that's a good example, I always say, if I had the app that I had today and I was in the situation that I was as a senior in college, this thing would have blew up. I was out there in front of thousands and thousands of students every day, and I had support from everyone. It was just it was almost like a revolution. People were wearing the shirts. I would go to a school, and I would have 15 kids. Like, we'd be walking to the bar, and everyone would have a Stunited shirt on, or we would be at a party waving the flag. It was like a movement almost. The problem was the fucking app wasn't there. Like, the app served no purpose at the time, so kids would get on it.
How so? Like,
so it was
specifically?
it was like a version 1. It was pretty much, think of like a card stack feature. You swiped right on people, swiped left on others. You can message those. The functionality or the logistics behind it just didn't really make too much sense. Notifications didn't work. So the value wasn't there. Like I said, it wasn't serving much of a purpose. And so people, and I wasn't in the position. I liked riding on my high horse and not asking the questions. Well, great, you tell me you support me, but why aren't you using it, right? Why is no one using this app? So I ignored those hard questions because I didn't want to accept that it wasn't going actually anywhere. Yeah.
Well, let me paint the picture. You're early on, you're still a senior in college.
Yeah.
You got the app. You got the shiny new thing.
Exactly.
Even if people don't know the numbers because they don't, like, even if they don't use it because they get no use out of it, you're that guy.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, that's Johnny Apps.
Yeah, well, that's my Instagram name is Johnny Stew. Like, that was I wore that on my shoulder, and people would ask the questions like, oh, like, how well is it going, and then how much money are you making, and you brush it off because you don't want anybody knowing. You're like, I'm doing well, but you're not fucking doing well.
Things are great.
Things are pretty good. So
don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm way more honest now than I ever was, and so if I had, like you said, the experience and the app that I have today, and was in that situation, that was like, like, we talk about tailwinds and we talk about opportunities that you'll never have again. That was definitely one of them. And not to say that this won't work because we have other opportunities now, but that one was a great one to seize. And it did help. And it helped us springboard into the next level.
It sounds like you got caught up in something that I think at one point or another, in some way, if even for a moment, a lot of us get caught up in. Maybe it's one post or maybe it's for a while, a period of our life, for whatever reason. But you get caught up in this world where you feel like you're supposed to be this thing. You're supposed to be this influencer. You're going to curate your perfect content on your Instagram feed to have you surrounded by beautiful looking women, selling your app with fucking, water guns everywhere at a summer party, showing that, like, oh, there's a lot of students that like this app, and you don't know what it is, but I'm Johnny Apps.
That's it, bro. And then you got to live up to that expectation. So when people see you, you can't tell them, hey, we're just starting out and we only have a couple users right now. We're in pre-revenue. We have no money in the bank, but it's gonna go super well. You have to perceive like, oh, he's the next Zuckerberg, right? Because that's how you don't understand how. Be him, but... Right, but people, you don't understand how high level these people think because they aren't in your space and they don't know. Yeah,
it's not their fault.
Exactly.
Like people got different speeds, but. Yeah, they look outside. They're like, "Oh, you're not driving a Ferrari,
right? What the fuck you doing?
What's that little 2012 BMW doing there? Like, what the fuck?
Where's your flashy clothes and where's that lifestyle you're living in?
It's scary, man. Yeah. The expectations we put on each other. That's one of the downsides of social.
That's where you can tell now just by talking to me that he has it.
Yep.
Because I do. When I was trying to fake it, I probably didn't realize, but it was very easy to smell at my bullshit.
Do you think you were arrogant?
No, I just think I don't think I was. I'm probably more arrogant now because now I know I have it. Yeah, because like, look, it's and it only.
You don't exude that at all.
Well, thank you. The only times that it'll ever come out is if you try to call me out for not knowing something or faking shit, because there is no faking it anymore. And I think I get almost insulted if you try to compare me to my old self. Like if you're like, oh, you're really not doing
okay.
That. And that's just how I am. Like, no, I'm going to be arrogant in that I know what I know. And I know what I don't know. So
I want to push back on that. It's one thing if you say, shut the fuck up, what do you know? That's arrogant. You don't do that.
Right.
I actually heard you in a Clubhouse room where you had to be like this last week a little bit with someone who just kind of didn't get it.
Yeah.
And none of that came off. You're just there's a huge difference between being arrogant and treating people like shit versus demonstrating and defending yourself to be able to show, going on the offense, to show people that, like, this is your life. Doesn't mean you know everything, but you fucking know your space, and you're going to make sure people know that so that they don't underestimate you.
So I'm going to retract my statement. I do think that I was arrogant because arrogance comes from you're afraid, you're insecure. So you have to push back and say, yeah, okay, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. I am who I think I am.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had nothing to back it up. Like, if you gave me pushback on the idea or the app, and it was 2 years ago, more often than not, I didn't have an answer. And I would be like, yeah, okay. Like, all right, I got it. Thanks, but no thanks. Now I take your criticism because I welcome it and I want to hear how I can grow, like I said. So, yeah, I think, was I an arrogant person? I don't think so, but I'm sure I snapped and I would give poor responses to people's just general concerns or questions, you know?
Yeah. And it's the pressure of it sometimes speaking.
For sure.
It's not who you are. And I try to remember that with some guys who are maybe going through it and are trying to show that they're not. I just feel bad that we've curated, I use that word purposely there, curated the society where that is the baseline. Like, you have to show that you're, and it's not, look, you have a choice. I'm saying we create these pressures on people and they don't realize that they're just responding to those pressures. I've done it too, where like, oh, you have to be like this. You have to do this thing, you know?
You know what I think is super interesting? And it just, I just realized it because you said, oh, you don't come across as that. You know John Rondi right now. I know Julian right now. I didn't know Julian as a banker. I didn't know you as a college kid. Yeah. You were probably very different. And just like I was, if you met me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you wouldn't think the same thing as me, of me. And not a good or bad, it's just different.
Sure.
And I think that's so interesting to sort of, you only met me a month ago. What do I put out to this world as a human being today versus people that have known me for 25 years? What do they think of me? You know, and I think it's very interesting. And it's honestly, it's good and refreshing to ask those questions. 'Cause for you to tell me, hey, John, you come across professional, you're not arrogant, you know what you're talking about. I need that sometimes because honestly, I struggle with imposter syndrome. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not as smart as I think I am, and I'm not as smart as the other people in my space. So you have to ask those questions sometimes.
Okay. Here's an interesting one.
Sure.
You say imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that goes hand in hand with that is the phrase fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
I have a very mixed relationship with this phrase. I think that there are two paths you can take in it, and I'm not so sure you can take a little bit of each. I think you're one or the other. Mm-hmm. And one is very negative, and then one is kind of positive. The very negative one, and this is one I see far too often, is people say fake it till you make it, and then they throw around every word like hustling and, you know, grinding and doing my thing and busting their head against the wall and thinking that just doing the work and putting it out there, whatever it is going to get the end result. And it's because they're young or they're trying to start something new and they just got to get there, right? The other part of it is establishing confidence and / credibility of fake it till you make it, in the sense that when you are diving into something new and getting something off the ground, you do have to exude like you know what you're talking about to an extent. These people, though, the big difference with them, the positive fake it till you make it's in my book, how I define it, which is just totally subjective, is that they are thirsty to learn. Yes. They are thirsty to pick up fucking everything. So, and they'll be honest about it too. Maybe sometimes they'll come in and they have a great new opportunity and somebody looks them in the eyes and says, can you do this right now? And they may say to this person, as of this moment, no, I can't, but talk to me in 24 hours. I'm going to be the best motherfucker at this you've ever seen. Yeah. That's a little bit of faking it till you're making it, but you're also honest about it.
That's a great point. And I've said it on this podcast. I say it in almost every phone call that I have with, you know, an investor or somebody that I need to sort of convince, is that one of my best skills is that I know what I know and I know what I don't know, right? So I
re-fucking tweet, man.
Like that, I'll never right now especially try to admit or try to present myself like I know something when I don't, because I know how fucking obvious it is. If I'm talking to you as a early stage entrepreneur, you could be 40, you can be 20, I don't care how old you are, and you try to pretend like you know something, I know when you're faking it, because that's who I was. I know when you're stuttering on your words and you're making something up and you're going on a tangent about something that has nothing to do with the conversation, you're lying. So just stop. Tell me what you know to the extent of that's it. And then tell me when you don't know. Like, I don't need you to be everything right now. Just be honest. And that carries over a lot.
First of all, somewhere Alex Horowitz is sitting there right now nodding his head and going, that's right, baby. That's right. That's a simple thing that he said, and other people have said it before, but he really, in that podcast, we did 2 podcasts. because he was here all day. But in that, I forget if it was 17 or 18, where we were going through this really complex topic on, you know, the upsides and downsides of social media. He just laid down the hammer and said, you don't know what you don't know, and not enough people understand this.
Yeah.
And it is such a powerful tool because we don't ever want to appear like we are not in the know in something that we think is going to be held against us. But that's the thing. Some of the most powerful words in the English language, provided you have effort behind what you do and you aren't just defaulting to it every time,
Right.
is I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me get back to you on that. And having the balls to say that, if someone
Having the ball, I was just gonna say, having the balls to say it.
if somebody takes that the wrong way, fuck them. Because they're and again, you got to be honest. Like, are you actually trying and you just don't fucking know anything because you're not really trying? Or like, are you actually trying and, you know, you just don't know this one and you're actually going to work to be able to say, like, I know that tomorrow or the next day or get there. There is this radical honesty you have to have with yourself where you're constantly evaluating, well, which one is it?
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's what comes from experience, because you realize how much of a bullshitter you are, and it's very easy to sniff that shit out.
Yeah, there was a quote I saw, I don't know, years ago. It was floating on social media, so I don't know. It was on a picture, and it said it was attributed to Jim Carrey, but I don't know if he really said it. I should really check that out.
It's like one of those like bullshit Drake
Right,
quotes. Yeah.
but it's a dead ass quote, and the quote was, "The older I get, the more I realize just how much people pretend."
Yeah.
And goddamn, is that it gets more and more true every single day, because when you're a kid, or even when you're in college, let's use that example, and the people come in from the job fair from all these different companies, and you know they're in their suits or
Never went to
whatever,
one.
right? And you just think these people have it figured out. You know, from the 25-year-olds who are there to the 65-year-olds, like, damn, he must know fucking everything, man.
Yeah, man.
You know, and you're like, you're constantly in this state of, well, what don't I know? Oh my God, I gotta know that. I gotta know that. Most of these people put their fucking underwear on backwards in the morning and don't realize it till their pants are on afterwards. And I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. They know that where their world is, and many of them, even the ones who work to know outside of it, and they deserve a lot of credit. You know how much they still don't fucking know?
They feel the same way you do. Like, and in that position, and that's really funny. I remember when I was a sophomore in college, we had somebody like come present their business or recruit us about something, and I was like, damn, like this dude's awesome at presenting. He knows everything he's talking about. He must feel great about this. He has no problems in the world. And then I would have to go do that, right? I've talked to, I can't even tell you how many college classes where I would present myself and what we're doing. And I'm thinking the same thing that the college kids are thinking. Like, man, like, I hope I present myself well enough. Like, I'm in my own head, whereas they're in their own heads. Like, that never really changes. So just having that perspective when you're talking to somebody, it levels the playing field. There's no reason why you can't be on the same level as anybody you're talking to.
Well, the other important thing here is the bullshit meter and your inherent ability with it.
Yeah.
Think of, and this is a mean way to put it, but like, think of someone relatively dumb who you know. You just, by the law of averages, we all know someone who's kind of dumb, right?
Yeah, sure.
Even that person, who may not be an intellectual or someone intellectually curious, whatever, even if they can't explain it, chances are they have, especially when they're watching people on TV and stuff like that, and it's not repackaged for them like the problems we see on social media where things can be manipulated. Mm-hmm. Those people, all of us, have a very, very good evolutionary built-in bullshit meter.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't, in fact, very smart people, maybe they can't even explain it. Very not smart people, maybe they can't even explain it. But they know, like, that made sense. Or like, nope, that guy's full of shit.
Yeah.
And there's just this thing, and sometimes they willfully ignore it. I mean, depending on what your motives are, you willfully ignore it. But we forget that when we're communicating because we're so stuck in like, well, how do we sound? And oh my God, did that sound smart or did that sound dumb? Let me put some more filler phrases in there. And it's everything, man. It's not just pitching your company. It's like how you have your closest relationships.
It's refreshing to know that you don't have to bullshit anymore. You know, you've reached a point in your life that you're like, I'm comfortable with what I know. And obviously, like we said, we admit that we don't know certain things, and that's okay. And you don't have to worry if somebody's going to call you out for your bullshit because you're not bullshitting. I'm going to tell you how it is, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel, and I have no problem. I don't have to think about what you think of me because I'm just sitting here in this conversation.
What do cops do? What do FBI agents do when they're in there with a suspect? Yeah, but what do they often do? They try to act like they're their friend.
Yeah.
Hey, we're just here to help.
Yeah.
Like they give them a coffee, they order some pizza, everything's recorded, and they have to say that. And, they make the guy feel comfortable or whatever. But their goal is just get them talking, and then see where they can get them stuck on a detail, and then put in filler words. And they're like hawks. They're trained that way. And so they see like, oh, there's one right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So now they know like that was one hit spot. So now we're going to get him way off that. And then we're going to come back again to it. And let's see what he fills it with this time. It's no different in life. It's no different in life in these conversations we're talking about. We are, when we talk about understanding where the other person's coming from, that's all it is. There's these little things where we're like, well, he's just kind of filling up space there. Especially like when people are using buzzwords all the time.
Yeah, that's why I avoid them. Like I'm not, like I said, I don't have the vocabulary as an intellect, so I'm not going to pretend to use these words because number one, if I use it wrong, then you're fucked. And then you're like, all right, well, this kid's credibility is out the door. So I talk the way I talk, and that's it. And I think you mentioned comfort. That's the biggest one. If somebody can make you feel comfortable, you're more likely to get their honest self. And if it's a criminal or if it's somebody you're pitching, that's why I never understood the dynamic of making a pitch feel so uncomfortable. Having a room of 10 people, you're the only person talking, you have a screen in front of you, and you gotta go. And if you fuck up on a word, you fucked up. It should be, why can't it be, we're sitting down, having a cup of coffee, eating some food, I'm asking you questions, you're answering questions, I wanna learn more about you as a human being. That is when you're gonna get the best version of that person. So I don't understand putting people under this immense pressure. I guess it's, you gotta see how they perform, and I understand that to an extent, but at the end of the day, I want to get the best version of you. I don't want to get the worst version.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's something fake about that.
It's very fake.
And no disrespect. Like I have a lot of respect for Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary and Barbara Corcoran and all these people on Shark Tank, but I can't watch that show. I think it's like, to me, and I know there's an element of it is technically reality TV, but it is more real than a lot of shows. Like they actually give the money and stuff like that. To me, it's still it feels like 1990. It doesn't feel like today. And I don't know who it is, but maybe it was Sequoia or Andreessen Horowitz, one of them. They do a thing with projects that they're evaluating where they have dinner with them. And that's
smart.
Oh my God, it's so smart. And so when COVID happened, they do the fucking, I mean, this is like kind of stupid. I make fun of this, but I get it. Like they do the dinner on Zoom. Like they make sure everyone brings food and shit.
Well, did you know, and I didn't know this either, food is like the, I forget what they call it, but like it's the most comforting thing. So it automatically, as soon as you start eating, you lessen the sort of anxiety that you once had. So putting food in front of somebody's mouth, it allows you to sort of relax. And now let's have a conversation. So that's why going out to eat, like on a date, is better than doing sort of, if you're going to stare at somebody from across the table with no food in front of you, things get fucking awkward pretty quickly. Yeah. So at least that loosens that a little bit. Yeah, and the other problem is like, look, there are things called actors in this world. So if I'm just a great actor and I can present for 10 minutes, does that mean my company is sound or the idea is great? No. But I can script that. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten up on stage or pitched to people and blacked out and literally memorized my script for 10 minutes. Whereas now I'm getting up there and I'm talking. And if you don't like what I'm saying, that's great. If I stutter on a word, it's fine, but it's organic and it's real.
That's the beauty of what we're doing here.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, people ask me, people who were not my target market at all, you know, kind of like the ones we were talking about earlier, like people in your life who want what's best for you, but have no fucking idea what they're talking about. At the beginning of this thing, they're like, well, shouldn't you just make your podcast 5 minutes or 10 minutes and have set questions or whatever? I'm like, fuck no.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to talk with people and talk about complex things. And I want it to be just like where the people listening to this are like, it's just a conversation at the table. You can't get that in canned questions. And,
For sure.
and we mentioned this for something way earlier, but you can't get that in 10 questions or, 10 minutes of sitting there and being like, all right, let's get to it. There's none of that. There's such a flow and an ebb and a flow to these conversations. And that's why I enjoy them so much, because I never know what's going to get the other person just jumping out of their seat, and they never know what's going to get me doing whatever the fuck I do. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like, even if you were, and I don't think people are wrong in the sense of like short-term content is great, but you have the opportunity to split up a 3-hour podcast into 20 5 to 10 minute clips, and that is a better 5 to 10 minute clip than if I just sat down here for 10 minutes and you had a sheet of questions. So you can turn this into shorter formed content, and it's going to be a lot better.
Yeah, and the other, I think I've said this before, but I'm transparent about this. I don't like cutting within a podcast at all, because that takes away from like it's supposed to. Yeah, it's supposed to be a conversation, right? Like I hate that, and I want it to be honest. Like when we're like kind of fucking up and thinking about something, that would happen in a normal conversation, and people are listening to this in their earbuds. I put it on YouTube, but that's for people who like to just, when they work at a desk, throw it on another screen and glance over once in a while. No one's fucking sitting there and watching it the whole way through, so they're not like, oh, I'm going to stop watching because they just paused. There's an honesty to it.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, a couple things, right? Like, you mentioned how being like pausing in a conversation is natural. So if it's so natural, why do we feel so awkward when it happens, right? Like, why do I now automatically, if I don't know what to say, I like turn and look away and, okay, shit, fucking, let me go to my phone, and all right, now I'm going to come back when I have something to say. No, shit. This, honestly, it makes it easier. I mean, we just talked for 3 hours straight, and it was engaging the entire time. I didn't feel awkward 1 second of it. And I don't know why we have this sort of gap when we try to have these conversations in real life. Well,
real life is one thing. On that first point, though, this one happened to start off where, we were chilling and doing work today, right? So we were vibing for like 3 hours before this. So I already know this is a podcast is pretty much going to start off right at the top. Sometimes I'll, even on the ones that start perfectly, like I'll start at one sentence in because it flows right or whatever. But, this isn't one where it's like going to start 20 or 30 minutes in.
Sure.
But the one thing I will say is I've had podcasts before that are some of my best ones, there's been 2 like this, where we are terrible for like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, one was totally my fault, and the other one was just we were like trying to get our cadence down or whatever. But, for whatever reason it's happening, like maybe you're not feeling good or whatever, and then suddenly that thing comes up and it clicks and boom, and now you go down every rabbit hole and it goes where it goes. And so I'll pick up, like, one I'm thinking of in my head, that podcast was a 3-hour podcast. We were recording. That one I picked up an hour in. We were recording for an hour, and we were terrible for the first 55 minutes. And then a topic came up, and I started to pick it up right in that topic because I was like, oh, we both lit the flames, and it was great.
Right.
That's honest, though. It's not like you're taking the best part from within. That's what clips are for.
Right.
When you're doing this shit lives forever. If 0 people are listening to it right now, well, 5 years from now, I don't want that to be the case, right? And so people are going to go back. I want them to see the honest progression of this. I want them to see how everyone who comes in here thinks. They're going to know how I think after listening to a few, I guess. But, like, I want them to see the range of people coming in here and where they come from and what kind of ideas they have, to see where I'm fucking wrong and those people are right, or vice versa. To me, that's a special thing that is unique to this space.
Yeah. And I think this is something that I heard Joe Rogan talk about, and this is pretty amazing. He's like, the best thing you can do is imagine your life was always getting recorded. Like, imagine your life was a documentary, and everything you did was getting documented, and your future children or your family and your friends are watching this. You're going to act differently. And I think this sort of puts us on the spot in a good way. We got to perform. We got to step up. We understand that people are watching us, and we have to entertain. So for whatever reason, I think you don't realize how, I guess, like, how great you could really be on the spot. When you have conversations with somebody, when things get a little bit awkward, or, you want to hesitate to say something, you don't say it, or you get on your phone like we just mentioned, but we have to, right? Like, I have to have a great answer for what you just asked, or I have to have a great follow-up to what you just said. And we're forced to, and your bodies do it, and your mind does it. And I think that's where, you realize like in life, some things you just have to do. And in this podcast, that's one of them.
I'll push back on that a little bit. I like where you're going with that. But you're saying you have to. I would say no. You have to at least know you're giving the effort to. Meaning you have to know that you're present in this conversation.
That's it. Yes.
The beauty of this format is that you can't hide.
That's a great, I like the word you use, is present. More often than not, I'm in a conversation and I'm not present. I have to be present because I have to say something back that makes sense. I can't be over here when you're talking to me. It forces me to be present, and we should be forced to be present much more in our lives. We should just fucking pretend. Like Joe Rogan said, you got a camera on you right now. Be in this moment.
And you can't entertain either.
Yeah.
Like you're using that word, and I'll push back on that because you cannot put on a face for that long. Look, if Daniel Day-Lewis is sitting right there, he can pull it off. Like
right.
there are some
That's
people on this,
there's
a special kind of person. I would leave him in here for 48 hours to try to see if he would break. Probably wouldn't, but there's a few people that can do that in this world. Very few. The truth comes out. And that doesn't just go for my guests. That goes for me every time I'm on here. When I'm recorded talking to someone for 3 hours, like, it is what it is, man. You can't. I guess the beauty of it to me is that it's mortifying watching yourself, especially when you got to edit yourself and whatever. And now it's happened so much that I'm at a point where it's second nature. Right. So thankfully, I don't think about it as much. It is what it is. But you naturally think you suck and everything. One thing you do notice though is that in this kind of format, it especially when I'm listening to the guest who I talk to a lot offline. Mm-hmm. It's the same as when we talk. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about whatever we're talking about that day. You know, the next day on the phone, we might be talking about something different, but the cadence, the timing,
sure.
the histrionics, the lack of histrionics, it's all the same. What gets you up, what kind of brings you here, like, it's not any different on this. And I wonder, in fact, I doubt if I was forced to compress this into 20 or 30 minutes and say like, all right, we need to go for the hitter. There'd be a lot of acting going on, man.
Yeah,
We'd
be the motivational speakers, and we'd be hitting these points so quick. Not
to name names, but you
just
gotta do it, man.
Exactly, but seriously, and that's why it comes off so cheesy at times,
Mm-hmm.
But it's he's forced, and not just him, he's forced to, because that's the platform. Nobody wants to watch a 3-hour podcast. They want to watch a 30-second clip on Instagram. So. It's sort of like fake in a way, but even like just you having the conversation to say, hey, I don't agree with what you just said. This is how I feel. If we were having a conversation and these mics weren't on, you would have probably just let it go. You said, yeah, sure. That's cool. And moved on.
I wouldn't have. You're right, though. A lot of people
Most people would have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know.
But you're a rarity, man.
I'm
and that's
shameless
why,
sometimes.
But that's why you are doing what you're doing, because you're a rarity. Most people don't have that skill of being in the conversation. And that's why you're a podcast host, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that is your skill. And we talked about identifying what you're good at. You are fantastic at creating a conversation and then pulling the best out of me. I feel comfortable saying and doing what I'm doing and saying because you've made me feel like that. And that's a great, dude, and I'm serious. Like, that is a great skill to have, and it's fucking rare.
Thank you. And well, I mean, that's all you can ask for doing this, because I've said this before, and I'll say this many times after this. My goal here, regardless of where this goes and what I'm looking to do, when I bring someone in here, yes, sometimes it's someone I got connected to, but like with you, someone I got connected to. I've formed a very good relationship over the last month. Yeah. Before, and we took a few weeks to even schedule this on the calendar. So if you sucked after a week, I might have just been like, yo, I'm gonna stop fucking. I'll just be like, hey, another time for this guy, right? But you didn't. With the people I bring in here, I respect them a lot, even if I disagree with their viewpoints. Like, I've had people from the left and right who are clearly hard on one end in here, and obviously, like, those are, I'm kind of like a radical centrist at this point in my life. Like, those are people that I'm gonna have a lot of disagreements with, but I understand where they come from, and I love talking with them. I got a fuck ton of respect for them, and they're people who I think exhibit, the ones I've had in at least, are people who I think exhibit leadership skills. They're the kinds of people that I feel like, hey, if you got to have a left and a right that are going to disagree on a lot of shit, those are the kinds of people I'd love to see in DC, and I don't think either of those guys would ever do it. That's who I'm thinking of, because they're like above that. But, I look at these people, whether it be them or anyone else I've had on here, And I see them in a very special way through my eyes. And all I want to do is have give them a platform to have the rest of the world see them through their own eyes the way that I do. That's what I want. I want people to walk out of here after, or take their earbuds out of their ear, or, take off the YouTube on the screen and say like, yo, I really fuck with this John Rondi kid. In fact, I'm not in college. I don't give a fuck about that app, but I'm following this kid. I'll fucking download the app myself just to see what the hell's going on there. Yeah. That's what I want, because they're seeing someone who's a game changer. And the special part of starting a podcast like this and building at the beginning is I identify people who I'm like, oh, this person's special.
I mean, you're on point with everything, and I will say it, right? Before this podcast, right, you were talking about your network and how you can help me, and everybody does that. Everybody says they're going to help one another, and it's great. You literally got your phone out, went through your contacts, found people that you think could be beneficial for me to know, and you fucking called somebody, like, on the spot. And then what you did was you sold me very well. And I always say it, I think I have a skill where I will sell somebody way better than they'll sell me. It's just like the trait that I have. And I think you have that as well. You are making sure that at the end of this podcast, people see the best version of John Rondi. And that's a great trait to have. And I saw it fucking live. And that in itself is like, wow, I can trust in this guy, Julian.
I appreciate that, man. And what the other thing I'd put on top of that is that since you're the guest on a podcast like this, you can't hide either. So there's no one who sells yourself better than how you present yourself. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't shy away from sale or sell, and it has a negative connotation to it a lot. But no, there are things to sell that are honorable that you believe in, and there are things to sell that aren't because you just want to sell and get gain out of it. Right. And so when we sell things we believe in. So like me calling up Jim, and that was one of the guys we talked to, I believe in you. And I of course I believe in Jim. I've known him for years. He's amazing. And I'm like, wait, these two guys, I don't know. There might be something there. Let's see what that is. It's not even a sale at that point, but it is. Because you're like saying, Jim, I know you don't know John, but here's John. We're on speakerphone. So say what up. And here's what he does, and here's why I think it's really good. And then it gets him interested, and I'm not fucking bullshitting.
That's it. Like, you could have easily said, hey, Jim, I think you should talk to John. And hey, John, hey, by the way, here, grab the phone and talk. Like, no, you took the initiative and, like I said, sold me and the idea well enough for Jim to get interested. And nobody is a better salesman, in my opinion, than somebody else vouching for you. I'll sell myself and you'll believe in what I'm saying because I'm good at it over time. But at the end of the day, you talking to somebody else and convincing them to like me or listen to what I'm saying is usually going to be a better situation.
And it ties into everything, man.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just use one simple example at the highest level of culture and politics. When Obama ran both terms, he comes from a more gun control stance, right? Mm-hmm. And guess what? He sold that because he believed in it. Yeah. And he think what you want of it, he acted on it. Now, personally, I'm more of a Second Amendment guy because I believe in the slippery slope. I think that's a problem. Okay, that's not how he sees it. Mm-hmm. He went out there and he made efforts to do gun control publicly, right? Then you have Trump come in. What does Trump run on? Trump runs on no gun control. We're not taking your guns. I don't want the government doing that. Right. And guess what? He acted on it. He protected it at every single level, including when it was unpopular to do so. So here's two people that people either love or hate, or I don't know, like whatever it is. Like, as far as like polar opposites go, polar viewpoints, it's still the same thing. They're not like, they weren't selling that, and both of those guys sold a lot of things that were bullshit. Let's get that straight. I'm using an example that they could actually back up with their actions. They sold those things because those were things that were near and dear to them, and then they did exactly what they said. So it wasn't like this sleazy, I'm going to call you up and sell you the greatest stock you've ever seen right now. It's like, no, like Obama, I would like to control guns. I don't like mass shootings or whatever logic he puts behind it. And then Trump, like, all right, I don't want to control guns because I don't want the government taking them, or whatever logic he puts behind it. And then what they did backed it up. So, that's like one time we give a positive as far as like credit for, two opposite politicians. But It's true, man. Like you have to get behind things you believe in, and not just believe in them because you want them to be what you want them to be. You have to believe in them because they are what they're presenting themselves to be, and you know what? They're going to add value for other people, and you're going to look good in the end as well.
Right. You gotta believe, and if you're gonna sell somebody to somebody else, you gotta believe that they're gonna act upon what you're sort of saying.
Goddamn right, dude.
Yeah.
All right, John, we could go all night here. That's why I say I haven't had a podcast I haven't had to cut off. That's
look, man, I get it.
Every single one.
I'm telling you, and again, I already hyped you up, and I'll stop hyping you up, but it's because of you. Like, you made this feel like it was 30 minutes, and it's been fucking, 4 hours now? Because this is your gift, man. This is what God gave you, so fucking use it.
I appreciate it, man. I was off my game today, too. You kept me good. I was not feeling great. So I enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. Love hearing about what you're building here. I love guys who, I said this 3 times today, I'll say it again. I love guys who get in the dirt and are willing to do it however they got to do it to get it done because they believe in something, and you do that. So I'm looking forward to having you on again if you'll come back.
Oh, of course, man.
All right, cool.
That's it.
And in the meantime, let's go get drunk.
That's it.
All right. Everyone else, give it a thought. Get back to me.
Appreciate it.
Peace.